Hello, are you there? Mike, are you there?
Hey, welcome back everyone to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 188. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lino.
Hello, everyone. How you all doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I am well.
All right. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. And there's a document in the description beneath the video for you to follow along with. We are Manosphere 3.0 compliant. My ice is colder. You're the first one in here. What's going on, brother? Let me get ready to share my screen, and then we can get started right away. Just Be You TV. What's going on? How are you doing? All right, let me share my screen. All right, so this first one is from the Atlantic.com. The other Notre Dame was not rebuilt. Perhaps France should help Haiti, its former colony, rebuild the cathedral lost in the 2010 earthquake. When I watched the fire consume the beautiful spire that for so long graced the roof of Notre Dame de Paris, I was moved by the destruction, but also reminded of another partly destroyed cathedral in a very different place. That still lies in pieces, forgotten. Notre Dame de l'Assomption, the vaulting, overwhelming Haitian cathedral in downtown Port-au-Prince, was brought to its knees in the earthquake of January 12, 2010. That huge seismic event killed hundreds of thousands of Haitians and also managed to knock down almost every government building and many of Haiti's 19th and early 20th century cathedral Catholic churches, such as uh, such as the cathedral, sending huge, heavy bells and shards of stained glass down onto the street on the city's broad streets. Ever since the earthquake, Haitians have imagined rebuilding the central structure of the capital. Some steps were taken early on, but as they say in Haiti, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Epeyan, and then nothing. Almost a decade later, I wonder whether Haiti really needs to invest in this symbol of a past era. Unlike the French government, the Haitian government has been entirely absent from the discussion about reconstruction of the national cathedral for many reasons. First, if someone else can be made responsible for the work and financial outlay on a project, then the Haitian government, which is usually poorer than, say, Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, is going to let the other group do the job. In this case, the Catholic Church. Also, Haiti, infinitely more than France, has extreme and pressing problems that are far more serious than the rebuilding of some old building. Education, basic nutrition, healthcare, energy infrastructure, infrastructure to court, sanitation, and of course security as elections approach and gang violence escalates. Not that the Haitian government is doing anything much about those either. Haiti doesn't have a lot of billionaires hanging around ready to take a special charitable tax deductions by giving huge donations to rebuild the church. Nor is the Haitian cathedral a world building in the way that Notre Dame de Paris had become. So when people saw Notre Dame de l'Assomption in ruins on TV in 2010, they didn't know what it had been before. As a piece of architecture and a monument, it had no real meaning outside Haiti. Very few people outside Haiti felt it was It was a part of their lives as humans on the planet. Unlike the cathedral in Paris, with its 13 million visitors yearly, rightly, those who saw reports of the Haitian earthquake turned to more human focused organizations and projects when they decided to make charitable donations. So, this is a long article, but it really really hit the nail on the head about how melanated people are constantly being neglected in time of crisis. Um, it's interesting to see Donald Trump out there stomping for this Notre Dame cathedral, but doesn't want to acknowledge the very black churches and all throughout the South that are being torched and burned to the ground and having all types of SWAT stickers and shit are put on them. What's your take on this? I know.
This is very interesting. I'm not as well versed in Haiti architecture and landmarks as other brethren on the brain trust, but I would say that he has a valid point.
Hmm.
Those structures were built a very long time ago, and um, not as long ago as some of the structures in France, but at the same time, they're older as a lot of the older structures in France. So
Hmm.
he has a valid point. Hey, how you doing there, Paul?
Hey, Lionel. How are you, Mike?
Paul Bryant, what's going on?
I'm good, bro. I'm good.
You have anything you want to add to this?
Honestly, Mike, as you said, the article really hit the nail on the head. Excuse me. What I will say is this: before I relocated over here to Germany, a few Haitian brothers that at the gym that I used to work out at, um, they were in Haiti earlier this year, specifically in January of 2019. And, you know, I asked him, I said, listen, I've heard people tell me, I've heard Haitian people tell me that once you leave Port au Prince, which is the capital, there are parts of the country that look as if the earthquake happened yesterday. And they both said, yeah, that's 100% accurate. That the government buildings have been rebuilt. Most of the city looks pristine, but once you leave the capital, the vast majority of the country, very little has changed. So
Mhm.
the Clinton Foundation, Hillary Rodham, her brother Bill Clinton, George Bush, all listen. The entire cast of characters. Every that a lot of black people still believe they walk on water. Right, billions were stolen, literally stolen. The Red Cross, the Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, it goes on and on and on. But without getting off topic, there's really not much that I can add to this article. Only to say, it boggles the mind that a bill that whatever the amount of money that was actually raised to go towards rebuilding the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, which I've been to several times, but nothing, relatively nothing, has been done to rebuild Haiti. And there's really not much that I can add to that. It's just I'd like to say it's mind boggling, but it's not. It doesn't surprise me. It's just shameful.
It then makes you question: is it worth even rebuilding if you're a Haitian, right? I mean, do you decide I need water purification systems, or do I need a cathedral? I think I'll let that cathedral sit while I get some clean water.
Right. And you know what? See, all right, here's my take on that. You're right.
Hmm.
I agree with what you said 100%. I'm not disagreeing in any way. What I am saying is in order to further your thought,
Hmm.
that kind of breaks the mindset of Haitian people. It's like, damn, now we have to decide whether we want to rebuild our natural landmarks or whether we want to look at the basics of human survival. So over time, that weighs down on the psyche and the mindset of the Haitian people. It's like damn, like we just can't win for constantly losing. Follow me? It's
Yes.
shameful.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't even know. I'm not a Haitian, so I can't really speak on what Haiti needs to do. But
Right,
I don't even know where to begin if I was a Haitian. Right? Where do you begin?
right, right.
Um, in terms of rebuilding that island, or do you just leave it as a heritage site? That's protected by the United Nations or something like that.
Well, the thing is, given the excuse me, sorry, given the history of everything that I've seen, leaving it leaving it to the protection of the UN, you know, that's not going to turn out well. Hello,
Yeah, can
Mike?
you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was done. I'm sorry.
Okay. Let me jump to the next article. DE, what's going on?
Good evening, everybody. I'm okay.
Hey, D.
All right. You have anything you want to add to this Haitian cathedral not being built and Trump sending funds over there for the France cathedral?
Well, we know uh, this from what I'm seeing. That thing that happened in France is a false flag, and it's like to help France get over this green revolution that's happening over there. But still, I don't know. Haiti has got the Haitian people has got to put an end to what's going on in Haiti. They have to stop it. They're going about it the right way, but they have to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
So, giving money to the French while people are starving is outrageous, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean France gets what 26 to one third of its GDP out of Africa itself. Why does it need any more money? You know, from anyone else? Like it already has enough money that it takes from other countries. I just find that mind-boggling that anybody would even donate any money to that. Not that I have a problem with the Catholic Church. I don't have any personal gripes with them. I think they have a large enough constituency that they can actually do that. And that's my thing about the politicians in the United States. One day they're Zionists, the other day they're standing out there with the Catholics. You know, I just find that to be mind-boggling. They're Christian another day, but they're only Christian in one way, not Christian in the South Carolina church that was went through its massacre. They don't pay homage to that, but they go to the wall, and put their hand on it, and say huzzah with people with little hats on their heads who control, and occupy, innocent people in the Gaza Strip, so in the West Bank, and take territory from Syria by occupying the Golan Heights. Very weird people.
Yeah, but you know what, Mike? Listen, power only respects one thing: power. So
Hmm.
I listen. I agree with you. Let me be 1,000% clear on that. I agree with everything you said.
Hmm. All right, let me get to this next article. This one is from thehill.com. Pompeo says Maduro's inner circle looking for exit strategy in Venezuela. I hate these pop-ups, man. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Monday that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's inner circle is looking for an exit strategy, a sign that the embattled regime days may be numbered. We see leaders inside Maduro's circle or Maduro's inner circle now trying to figure out what the golden ticket looks like. What does it look like if I leave? Pompeo told the Hill's Bar Cusack at a Newsmaker series event sponsored by the Partnership for Open and Fair Skies. When they start asking these questions, surely some of them will decide there are better times ahead not supporting that thug. The Trump administration has made regime change in Venezuela a top foreign policy priority. The United States was the first of now more than 50 countries to recognize Venezuelan National Assembly President Juan Guaido as the country's interim president. Guaido was sworn in as president by the opposition in January following Maduro's reflection, which was declared illegitimate by most international observers, including the United States, the European Union, and the Organization of American States. Speaking at Monday's event, Pompeo said he hoped China would follow suit in recognizing Guaido. He also had a warning for Maduro's other allies like Cuba, Iran, and Russia. You've seen the efforts we've made to try and convince the Cubans, who have hundreds of intelligence officers, thousands of people working with the Maduro regime, to convince them that that's not the right foreign policy, that Maduro is going to leave. And when he leaves, they are going to be in a far better place if they choose a better path, Pompeo said. We are making the same case to all parties that are supporting Maduro, he added. I I always find it interesting that there's this idea that people who like to follow the Black Brain Trust, they always think that if Maduro leaves, Venezuela will be so much better. It would just be so much better if Maduro left, and it'll, you'll have trickle down economics. This capitalist fantasy where everybody will be driving around in Range Rovers and Bentleys, and sipping on coconut water and stuff like that. That's far from the truth. It's a liberal fantasy that's never going to come to fruition. Um, at least not for the Venezuelan people, because if they were so concerned about humanity, they'll be in Haiti helping those people out. But they're not in Haiti helping those people out. They're more concerned about overthrowing their government in Venezuela and then pretending as if they're so concerned. But in places like the state of Georgia, massive poverty there, people living on top of sewage and broken septic tanks, and no one's talking about that. You guys can jump in.
Yeah, well, listen, going back to Hugo Chavez, going back to Bolivar and his movement, the entire thought, the idea that the problem is Maduro, and if Maduro goes away, everything is going to somehow magically go away, is foolishness. It is simplistic, nonsensical foolishness. It is clear to anyone who pays close attention that the United States has interfered and meddled in this country from every level, from top to bottom. When you have uh, Pompeo, when you have the president himself saying that we're doing everything that we can, we support Guaido. Maduro is a bad guy. When you look through the lens of history, when you look all the way back to the Monroe Doctrine, to the Manifest Destiny, when you look at the CIA playbook, which is a carbon copy of the British MI6 playbook, how much more do you need to know to understand and realize this has nothing to do with socialism. It has nothing to do with the style and method of government in place in Venezuela. This comes down to the United States and the Monroe Doctrine and everything that they're doing to destabilize the government, to put in a puppet government that the United States can either weaken and or control, as it does every other nation in this hemisphere. So, beyond that, um, that mindset and those talking points, that Maduro is the problem and that the people are drinking secret toasts to Guaido's health. That's sheer and utter nonsense. And I dismiss that out of hand. That's about all that I have to say about that. DE, the floor is yours.
Like Paul said, all we have to do is just look back at we were going to make Iraq a better place, Afghanistan a better place, Syria a better place, um,
Libya.
all the other places that even and people not hearing about the places that Niger. I don't know if anybody know where Niger is in the chat. If they look at Niger, find Niger on the map and see what the French did there, which is the biggest ally in NATO. What the British, if we can go all the way back to through history and listen to the stories and read the stories about we're going to make things better and see what happened to those countries. Before the lieutenant took over in Ghana, Ghana was just like Venezuela. Just go back and read Ghanaian history. Go back and look at it. And the lieutenant had to take out half of the generals and the government in order to clean up Ghana. So I don't know what these people are arguing about. They don't. They should read history. That's all I have to say.
I know.
I have no more input on other than what they just said. I have nothing else to add.
We got 30 people watching, 19 likes. Hit the like button, please, if you're not going to chat in the chat. All right, let me get to this next article. This one is from FoxNews.com. Eric Prince pushing for private mercenaries in Venezuela to break stalemate. Report. The founder of the private security firm Blackwater is pushing for a plan to deploy a group of mercenaries in Venezuela to support the people's efforts to topple socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro, according to a report. Eric Prince is said to have been advocating for Venezuela, for the Venezuelan plan for the last several months, seeking political support and investment from powerful pro-Trump figures and wealthy exiles from Latin American countries. According to Reuters, Prince suggested during meetings in the U.S. and Europe that a private army of 5,000 would be deployed in support of Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido. The State Department didn't respond to Fox News' request for comment about the report, but a person familiar with the Trump administration's thinking told Reuters it's unlikely the White House would support Prince's plan. A spokesman for Prince, meanwhile, insisted that Prince has no plans to operate or implement an operation in Venezuela. The reported push in Venezuela comes following amid a failed attempt to convince Trump to outsource the Afghanistan war to private contractors that Prince said could do more and for a lower cost than the thousands of U.S. military troops currently stationed in the country. Blackwater is now named Academy. Prince's new company is Frontier Services Group. History supports presidential authorization for the use of private military contractors during transition operations to help the U.S. and its allies achieve strategic aims. Now is the time to begin the transition, secure our vital interests, and husband our precious resources. What do you guys think about Blackwater trying to get their way in into places like Venezuela? I mean, we had we had the Contras in the 80s, right?
Exactly. So to me, I I go back to the Contras. I was in junior high school back in '85, if memory serves correct, during the Iran Contra hearings before Congress, which showed me it literally does not matter what you do in the United States of America, no matter what the crime is, as long as you have the right friends, you are literally going to walk away scot free. Now, I say all that to say, my personal take on this, and I'm curious to hear what Lionel and DE have to say because, full disclosure, I have not served. Those two brothers have. But my take on that is one, this is a message. It sends several messages. One, we have we have operators ready to go. Two, we probably already have operators on the ground, but now we're ready to roll in with a much larger force to begin to remove your forces. Three, this is per this statement provides public plausible deniability to say that, well, the president never authorized this, the Joint Chiefs never authorized this, but hey, everything all turned out well. God forbid Maduro turns up shot dead one day because his generals are all being killed out in the field, sight unseen. So I don't know how much further proof, going back to the question that Mike posed 5 minutes ago, for people to understand this is not about a quote unquote failed state or what type of government is in place. The United States, specifically the government being pulled by the wealthy elite who control that government, are trying to remove Maduro and put in place their hand picked puppet, Juan Guaido.
And keep in mind that this guy is a millennial. I don't know if he even has the tenacity to uphold a country like that. I mean, a lot of the well, what he considers to be opposition, the rightful people who are in power now, um, they're not going to tolerate this guy at all. Because if you look, I mean, YouTube has removed a lot of these videos, but there's a lot of melanated people in Venezuela being attacked by the opposition, being set on fire. The men are being set on fire. The women are having chemicals thrown on them. Hit over the head with bottles and stuff like that. Um, it basically looks like Jim Crow South.
And I to further clarify my personal stance, I'm not saying Nicolas Maduro is the answer. I'm not saying that he's the right man for the job or that everything is peaches and cream in Venezuela, because clearly it's not. All right. I'm not saying that. I have not heard any other person in the Black Brain Trust say that either. What we are saying is rise or fall. This is Venezuela's country. Let them figure this out. They're a sovereign nation. If they fail, then let them fail on their own. What I'm saying and what I've heard other men here in the Black Brain Trust say, this country is not failing on its own. It's failing because it has been pushed towards failure by the United States to replace its leader. And that is collectively, from what I'm seeing, our biggest issue here.
Mhm. Go ahead, De.
Uh, um, this Eric Prince is the private army of the elite in the U.S. Um, Wherever their interests are, even if the U.S. Army is there, the U.S. Marines are there, his organization is there. So in Venezuela, the people who want to manage the country, um, they are looking at and seeing things are not going the way that the government is pushing it, and they are looking for alternatives to get things going faster than what they're doing. That's my opinion. That's the way I think it is going. That's where I see it going. Because as the United States government is getting pushed back from other governments around the world, and it is the U.S. has to look at say China, what China has to say, or what Russia has to say in these circumstances now. In the past, the U.S. could do it as they damn well please, to quote one president. But today, it's coming to a point where the U.S. as the Russian says, it's a multipolar world where you should consider what the other countries, your neighbors are saying. And that's what's happening. The other countries are kind of like forcing the US to not act with impunity as they did before. Even if they act, they still would try to find overwhelming or produce overwhelming evidence that their actions are correct. And in Venezuela, they're not able to do that, even though they have the upper hand and they've done everything that would normally topple the average government next door. I'm not talking about in the Middle East. If they did that in Iraq without an army, Iraq would still survive. But this is South America, which is our backyard. And they've used all the all the moves without the army or navy, without the military. And that's not working. So the people who want to control the situation down there are saying, hey, we got to use other means. And there's where Eric Prince comes in.
Yeah, even if they wanted to send in 5,000 guys, those guys would get slaughtered so fast and so early. It would be it would be a big embarrassment to the United States to send special forces in there because there's no ingress area for them to penetrate unless they plan on hopping the walls and things like that. Most of the ingress areas have been closed off by the military, which is why Guaido has such a hard time getting out and moving around because if you look at some of the videos on YouTube, a lot of the tunnels, your bridges and stuff have been closed off, and he can't even get around. He's driving around in circles trying to find refuge. In the video he posted this morning on social media, he's in a disclosed location. You're in some kind of motel or something like that, or somebody's basement. You can't really, you really don't have that much mobility. BGS, jump in and go right ahead.
Well, we talked about this earlier. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you even if the Russians and the Chinese weren't there, okay, you're gonna if you invade and even if you topple the government, you're gonna have a nasty guerrilla fight for the next 30 years. I mean, a nasty guerrilla fight. You look in Colombia, man, they're still fighting in Colombia. This has been the last 40 years. You're gonna have a nasty guerrilla fight for the next 30 years.
Yeah, the FARC.
The FARC. So at the very best, you're gonna have a nasty guerrilla fight with the Chinese and Russians in there, actually, training these guys and putting weapons in there where you can get weapons from the outside now. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that you really want to do this. I'm sure they're trying to do this. A coup is probably their best option. They're trying to force a coup. They're trying to bleed the country so much to where the citizens will actually accept the coup rather than the circumstances they're under. But the only thing is, things were horrible for the vast majority of people underneath the former capitalists, the former folks that were under there. That's how come they actually overthrew them in the first place. So basically, a negotiated option is probably the best option that they're gonna have, because there is no good way to end this. If using military force in this particular country, and white folks don't do very well in those tropical climates anyway, which is one of the reasons why you never really seen too many big wars amongst the Europeans in subtropical climates like that, in tropical climates like that. They don't do very well. And it's very hard for them to actually get troops out to go down there for a long, protracted war like that. And like I said, Venezuela is particularly nasty. So I'm sure they're
What
trying to
about,
avoid it.
I see, sorry. What about if they get into that protracted war that you're talking about? Because it's going to destabilize the whole area. Northern Brazil is going to have problems. Guyana is going to have problems. Colombia, all those countries around Venezuela are going to have problems that they can't, because you got guerrilla wars cross borders.
He crossed. Well, yes, that's not the that's not the only problem. Obrador is a socialist. He's not a Marxist, but Obrador has been a socialist for the last 40 years, which is why he lost the first two um, presidential elections that he actually ran on. Obrador is not what you call a capitalist. He's a socialist. So Mexico is a semi-socialist state already. So basically, if things turn south, basically you're gonna have socialist countries going all the way up to your border. This can get real nasty really quick.
Exactly.
And then you factor in Nicaragua as a wild card.
When basically Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras. You remember all those in the '80s, all those Central American wars.
Yep.
Hmm.
Okay, those were socialist wars. They were trying to keep the Soviet Union out until '89 when the Soviet Union actually collapsed. Those were hot spots. So what happens if you kick all that stuff up again? Those people haven't gone away; they still remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but all of these not disagreeing, not at all. But if if we start to see continued conflict in every one of these countries, that in and of itself plays into the traditional playbook: weaken and or destabilize every nation. The United States would rather, and when I say the United States, I mean the wealthy elite who are actually running things. They would rather see every nation weaken and destabilize with constant conflict rather than dealing with any one strong, powerful nation.
I don't agree with you on that point, though, Paul. Yes,
So,
Hmm.
yes, to a certain degree.
hmm
But what happened is when all those countries, if you have one country or two countries being
Right.
destabilized, it wouldn't affect the U.S. in the same manner of all of them are, because you got to look at the rest of the world is already destabilized. So you don't have any other person to turn to and say for trade. This is your backyard where you're supposed to be able to trade, liberally. You and Brazil, you and Colombia, you and Mexico. But if you have the whole area destabilized, first problem you're going to have is deal with people. And you're going to have 50, 60 million people on the move. And where they're going to be headed to? Your door.
California.
Yeah.
Yes, Sally.
BGS's backyard.
good
I
point.
Yeah.
think
Good point.
I don't think that it's so much in the U.S. interest, but the corporatist business interest has taken place, where the Chiquita Banana and all the rest of the
Hmm.
Dole and the rest of these
Exactly
fruit
my
and
point.
vegetable companies and meat companies. Go ahead,
Okay.
BGS.
Look. Okay. Look. Oh, just look at you don't have to look very far, very long to look what's going on in the Middle East. Look what's going on in the Middle East. They destabilize all those countries, right? If you look at Syria, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, right? They destabilized all those countries. Guess who they handed them to?
Right into the EU.
Right into China.
Oh, yes, yeah, yeah. For the trade, yeah. For trade.
Basically Belt and Roads going through all those countries. Basically, after you leave and after because you spent $6 trillion already trying to keep a destabilized Middle East, right? You got another $6 trillion in your pocket to actually do this again to a bigger area because that was compared to Latin America. That's a tiny area with a very small population compared to Latin America. You talk about 600 million people. How much money is it going to cost you to destabilize and control that big old landmass? Plus all those people.
But
And do you
by
have
the
that money?
but by the flip side, again, just throwing out ideas. But
Hmm.
but on the flip side, we're seeing that Bolsonaro is talking about opening up the Amazon regions of Brazil for economic development and exploitation.
During in a war zone.
Well,
No, no, not no, no. What he's saying? No, I understand what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Exxon and a few other companies want
Mm-hmm.
access to the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that land was reappropriated to the indigenous population under Rousseff.
Mm-hmm.
She made radical changes when she was in power until NSA and CIA overthrew her.
right.
Mm-hmm.
That land is going to be taken away now and not so much as reclaimed, but basically eminent domain is taking place against those people. And same thing they
Mm-hmm.
want to do in Venezuela, which is what Venezuela is trying to fight against.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. So my point is,
Mm-hmm.
if we're seeing Venezuela and also
Mm-hmm.
Guyana, its neighbor, specifically
Bolivia.
Venezuela, destabilizing now, but with the goal of a coup to put Guaido in power, that will pave the way for further economic exploitation. Because now, if Guaido is in office, he is a U.S. puppet, as is Bolsonaro. So now, for the U.S., you can deal with multiple hot zones now, but looking for the long term from their mindset, a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, when things are calmed down, and the oil and everything else is flowing for them in their mindsets, win-win all around.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the upside.
But
That's
that's all they care about. They
yes, no,
don't
yes,
care
they do.
about the people on the ground,
I, I would say that's the upside. What is their downside? They have a downside. You
which
have
you
you have to control. You have to care about people on the ground because guess what happens to your assets if you don't control the people on the ground. People can blow things up. People can sabotage things. You have to control people on the ground. You have to do one of the things, either put them on a military force and control them, or you pay them off so they don't blow things up.
true,
Hmm.
true, but true, and I agree with you. But for now,
Mm-hmm.
from what I'm seeing, it seems to be the classic playbook of remove the leader that the U.S. that specifically the wealthy elite. When I say the U.S., I mean remove the leader the wealthy elite does not want in place to put in place their puppet.
Mm-hmm.
From there, they will then turn around and use any and all methods by hook or by crook to pacify the masses, which
Okay, but
historically has seemed to work very well, especially in the entirety of this hemisphere.
at what cost? You just spent basically you basically devastated the financial system, almost devastated the financial system of the United States by that Middle East war by trying to do the exact same thing. And and at the end of the day, you still lost control of the region.
Right. I'm not saying that I agree with it, and I'm not saying that it makes economic or financial sense. It doesn't. But that does not stop these individuals from doing what they're doing. It's not economically viable, but for them, for their mindset, it seems to be they don't care. They're going to push ahead, full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes. So
Be-
I don't disagree with your premise
mm,
that you just stated. I agree with it. Economically, it does not make a long term
mhm.
viable sense, but they keep pushing ahead anyway.
Because it's not about
Hmm.
economics, it's strategic. If you look at Mackin, if you go back and look at Mackinder in 1904 about the world, well, they call it the world island, and how you strategically control the world island and that center mass right around the Middle East, Eastern Europe, what they call Western Asia. Okay, the people Mackinder said, who controls that controls the planet. Okay. He said that in 1904. The Chinese just did an extension of Mackinder. Okay, in with the in 2006, and
All
then
right.
and then well, Belt and Road came after. Okay, basically once basically the Syrian thing was pretty much settled, and they had basic control of Pakistan, Afghanistan. Iraq is going to follow. Iran was safe. Basically, what they did is basically extended their territory, much like after Lincoln. After Lincoln won the Civil War, what came next? The transcontinental railroads, both of them. So basically,
Let me
Belt and
say
Road.
this,
Okay.
if I can quickly interject,
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to table this for open mic so Mike can get to the next article.
Okay.
All right, this next one is from RT.com. Maduro congratulates military for defeating coup attempt as Guaido calls for more protests. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has congratulated the military for defeating the plotters of a coup after a day of the protests called by opposition leader Juan Guaido. Maduro called the opposition supporters a small group that tried to fill the country with violence and confirmed his government has faced several modalities of coup d'état. He pinned Tuesday's violence on the U.S., who the president believes masterminded the failed attempt to overthrow his government. The president also announced the appointment of 3 special prosecutors to examine criminal actions by the opposition, noting that we have colonels wounded by bullets and in intensive care. Some of the protests were peaceful and others led to intense skirmishes, yet fatalities were avoided throughout the day. A few dozen people were injured by rubber bullets, tear gas, and allegedly live ammunition. An armored vehicle was also recorded ramming into a cluster of Guaido supporters. At least 5 soldiers and 2 colonels. Well, basically, what happened here was a Bay of Pigs attempt
Mm-hmm.
on Maduro, and that thing backfired like crazy. My position is that you should charge this guy with sedition and take away his passport, take away his driver's license, take away any sort of social benefits now at this point. I mean, starve him out. Why wait? Why keep playing? Back and forth with him. Just starve him out. Because at this point, he's a terrorist, or he's co-conspirating of overthrowing the government as a terrorist, in my opinion. What's the point in pussyfooting? Because if this was the United States and you had a million-man march coming to Washington D.C., the U.S. military would be on standby. There would be no playing around and recording video and stuff. I think what they're trying to do is drag this on as much as possible, at least from Maduro's camp. Because if this was any other country, they would have went in and took him out.
Mm-hmm. They don't want to give you United States any excuses.
Yep.
Well, they're calling. Yeah, a few hours ago they were calling for a no-fly zone over Venezuela. This
Of course they were.
Well, just throwing out an idea. It could also be someone is telling Maduro, let's not create a martyr. Only an idea.
Paul, you hit the nail on the head. Serious. The military is the key. If the military find out over the community and start suppressing everything, you're going to see that the rest of the world is going to say, well, what the United States is saying is true.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what the military is doing.
Exactly.
If that doesn't happen, if the United States provoke it, and it still doesn't happen, the rest of the world is going to look at it and say, look at the people in Venezuela are free to do what they want. There's no military oppression, as you were saying. So why should we be on your side? And that's exactly what happened. Maduro is playing a fantastic. I'm serious. He's doing. His advisors are doing a great job.
Well, he's already seen it. He's already seen it done. She's already seen it done twice. With Libya and Syria, and so they've already seen the same playbook. Try to uh, build up a so-called counter movement or a revolutionary movement, and then go to the UN and try to press for a no-fly zone, and then that gives them the so-called right or the excuse to actually start bringing in military troops to back up so-called freedom fighters. Same playbook.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
he's trying to avoid that playbook.
yeah. Because
Exactly. So Mike,
What's going on,
this
Joe?
is hey, what's up? So this is the thing that I think we talked about this weeks ago that Maduro's playing this real brilliantly. Because if he goes after Guaidado, if he tries to arrest him or have him killed or whatever, it's going to give the excuse for the United States to intervene into Venezuela. Because the United States, I mean, I wouldn't say Trump is, but John Bolton and Pompeo, they're itching for a fight. They're itching to just have a reason to intervene, but they can't really go in because how are you going to justify to the American people to get into Venezuela when there is no real justification? So I think Maduro just playing the long game. He just have Guaidado continue to discredit himself. I mean, this attempted coup, basically flopped, and he doesn't have as much support as the mainstream media over here tries to tries to play up. Um, and another key thing too is that Venezuela, the Venezuelan military is solid behind Maduro, and then on top of that, Maduro has the those collectivos, which are the the paramilitary militia in the city. Then he has FARC and the ELN and so many groups on the ground in Venezuela. So I think
Not
another
even
key,
talking about Hezbollah.
yeah, Hezbollah as well. Another reason why the United States is a bit apprehensive getting to Venezuela is kind of what BGS just said previously, that you don't if you're going to go in, it could be a bloodbath. You might have a guerrilla war that could be for like 30, 40 years. Like if you go in, remove Maduro, the country will never be stabilized for decades, and that's going to destabilize Brazil and Colombia, because all those gangs in the favelas in Brazil, they get their weapons from the FARC and the ELN in Colombia and Venezuela. If Venezuela's destabilized, Brazil's gonna get destabilized. That could be a bloody mess. And then you have Colombia. So I think they know that intervening into Venezuela is not a good idea, because what comes next? You can't just go in, intervene, and say, yeah, Maduro's gone. A mission accomplished. It's much more than that. And Chavez was brilliant in creating this security apparatus just for this moment, that in case if there's like social instability, that he has a lot of armed groups behind him, that if shit were to hit the fan, that if you remove me, after me will be chaos. It's the type of thing.
you know,
There's a lot of Haitians on the ground as well. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm sorry. I'd really like to add to what Zoe just said, as did DE and BGS. Um, a question that constantly comes up is, why do you guys talk about geopolitics? So I would really hope for anyone listening to understand this is how this global game is actually played. It is a game. It is chess. It is not checkers. It is move and counter move, feints and counter feints, and so much of what people see up front is mere theater for what's happening behind behind the scenes, and it affects everyone. What happens in one place happens someplace else, and there are so many insidious ways that this game is played that people can really learn a lot from how this game is played,
Mhm.
good or bad. I'm sorry, Mike.
No, go right ahead.
No, I'm not. I'm done. I'm sorry.
All right, let me get to this next article. All right, this next one is from the BBC.co.uk. What we've learned about Africa: freedom and security. Africans are willing to give up their freedom to move around where they like and say what they think, and are willing to be watched if it means they get more security, according to a survey by research group Afrobarometer. Here are 5 of the key findings. 1. Many Africans are willing to trade freedom for security. 2. Fewer Africans feel free to say what they think. 3. A significant number of Africans are willing to allow their private communications to be monitored. 4. Fewer Africans care about the right to join groups. And 5. Support for religious freedom is evenly divided. Without going too far into this, because it's just a survey, but I find it interesting that, see, the issue isn't so much that Africans are willing to trade their freedom, trade security for more freedom, or vice versa. It's more of an issue of literacy. We have laws in the United States, the things that protect our data, and things like HIPAA, and the SEC and the IRS and things like that, all types of institutions and agencies that ensure that any data that is lost or unwarranted electronic tapping and monitoring, those type of things are what keeps us aware and fighting for our freedoms. The Fourth Amendment. However, in Africa, you don't have the same exact thing. So you're talking about a continent that has been colonized for the last 200 plus years, and you're asking them to think on the same level as a Westerner or a first world power, and you're not going to get the same response. So I think that it's disingenuous to actually survey Africans on that level and not really fully understand the history of the continent and how colonialism has played a role in them.
Yeah, I think the problem with a lot of Western countries is that they try to, place their values on other non-Western countries. So in the United States, there's this belief that democracy is the best form of government, is the ultimate form of government. They don't look at a country's culture, they don't look at a country's history or whatever. They think, oh, if they get democracy, everything will turn out fine, everything will turn out great. But it doesn't work that way. I'll take it from the experience as a Haitian when they tried to force democracy in the 80s and 90s, which turned out to be a total utter disaster. That most Haitians are authoritarian people. Like, we are a very strict and authoritarian people, and they respect authority. They respect, militarism to a certain degree because of our history. But the United States was like, no, we have to put democracy. We have to, elections must happen, and everything would turn out okay. And also, there's an insidious side of it too, because with democracy, there's chaos. Things don't get done. Also, foreign powers can interfere, creates confusion, creates chaos, and that sort of thing. I think Africans probably, I wouldn't say they're an authoritarian people per se, but they value security over freedom, because far too long there's been too much. I wouldn't say too much, but there's been instability throughout the continent through certain sectors, and Africa has a lot of ungoverned, spaces that have to be dealt with. I think that's the one key thing that's preventing Africa from truly, reaching its potential. I mean, it's happening slowly but surely, but as long as there's militants and warlords, funded by the West, causing instability, Africa will never know its full potential. So I guess Africans, maybe young Africans, see that okay, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of freedom just for security, so my country can be stable. That could be it.
BGS, you have anything to add to that?
No, not right now.
All right.
Can I say
Anybody
one
else?
more thing? Um,
Go right ahead, brother.
I don't think Africa is ready for the kind of freedoms that we have here in the U.S. Even though our freedoms are not really, you know. Anyway, they're not ready for that kind of freedom because they came out of they never had the freedom in reality. The colonial masters used to beat them down. You do as I say, or you're gonna end up with your hand chopped off, as the British did, or the Belgians did, or you're gonna throw you in a jail, throw you in a prison camp. Um, they got independence, and the British, um, in the case of France, they put whoever they want in. The British put whoever they want in. Whoever wanted their man in there, and they gave him the power to do whatever he wanted with the country.
Yeah.
Now the generation today is just learning to what freedoms they're testing their freedoms because they're seeing the kind of the cell phone in their hand is allowing them to see things that they never seen before, and they're testing their freedom. But you can go too far with it, and if you go too far with it, it can cost you your life, like in Egypt, for instance. You know.
Yeah. Well,
So
basically,
Good point.
there's a very good documentary. I think it's called from the BBC called I think it's called it's called the I think it's Spear. It's the spear, the gun, and the cannon. I think that's what it was called. And basically, and quickly said the same thing. The reason you got liberal democracies is not because of government and not because people being kind. The thing is that the amateur weapons you had to have these massive citizen soldier armies, and the only way you're going to get them is to give back something to the people. So democracy came because this is what they needed when Napoleon marched across with the citizen army, actually marched across all of Europe and into Russia. They figured out real quick that the model that we're on, this authoritarian model that we're on, is not going to work. You're going to have to give something back to the people, otherwise, your country's not going to survive. So that's the reason you have the liberal democracy that you have, and plus, this is over a period of like 500 years that Europe killed what half a billion people. So was you didn't get this stuff for free. This is something that white people just invented and came out of nowhere. This is a very long, bloody process that actually gave us what we think that we have, which is democracy. It's not that simple.
Mhm.
Um, I would like to say that I spent about 22, 21, 22 months straight living and working on Africa. And, my take on things over there tend to be very different as opposed to people who've never actually been there. With that said, I am rather wary when I see things like that. And from my experience, from what I've seen and experienced firsthand, I lean to what Mike said, and he nailed it right on the head. People are ready for it's a question of literacy, it's a question of education, it's a question of economic and financial infrastructure and how certain people feel that they can best attain that given the current situations. It is much more complex and nuanced than I've said, and it would really take more time to go in depth on that. So I'm gonna let Mike get to the next article for the sake of expediency.
All right. Thank you. All right. This next one is from TheGuardian.com. Ukraine president offers Russian citizenship and snub to Putin. Vladimir Zelensky, the comedian who last week won Ukraine's presidential election, has dismissed an offer by Vladimir Putin to provide passports to Ukrainians and pledge instead to grant citizenship to Russians who suffer under the Kremlin's rule. The Russian president on Saturday said Moscow was considering plans to make it easier for all Ukrainians to obtain Russian citizenship after it earlier moved to grant passports in the country's separatist east. Kyiv has been fighting Moscow-backed rebels in eastern Ukraine since 2014 in a war that has killed 13,000 people. Zelensky, who takes office in June, responded to Putin's offer by releasing a statement on Facebook late on Saturday that pledged to give citizenship to representatives of all nations that suffer from authoritarian and corrupt regimes, but first and foremost to Russian people who suffer most of all. We know perfectly well what a Russian passport provides, he wrote. The right to be arrested for a peaceful protest and the right not to have free and competitive elections. He said one of the differences between Ukraine and Russia was that we Ukrainians have freedom of speech, freedom of the media, and the internet in our country. A political novice, Zelensky has pledged to reboot peace talks with the separatists that also involve Russia and the West. Putin has not congratulated Zelensky on his election, but said he was ready to talk with a new Ukrainian leadership and wanted to understand the actors' position on the conflict. In his Facebook post, Zelensky warned Russia not to talk with Ukraine in the language of threats or military or economic pressure. He previously called for further international sanctions against Moscow in response to Russia providing citizenship to residents of Ukraine's separatist east. The EU also condemned Moscow's passport scheme, calling it a fresh assault on Ukraine's sovereignty and saying Russia sought to destabilize Ukraine after its presidential election. Putin's decree last week allows people living in Ukraine's unrecognized Donetsk and Luhansk breakaway republics to receive a Russian passport within 3 months of applying. I find this guy to be very interesting. He's supposed to be a comedian, right? So you can't really tell if he's serious or not. I mean, imagine if Kevin Hart, ran against Trump or something like that, and he started talking about foreign policy. Like, would you really take him seriously?
Absolutely not, because he's a complete and total fool, and people who are entertained by that nonsense says a lot about you in my mind. But with that being said, I take your point.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what's going on, Dr. Yaya?
Hello there, Mike.
You there, Mike?
Mike.
Yeah, you there, Mike?
I'm going to assume Mike dropped off.
Well, yeah. Basically, if Germany looks like it's going to go east, because that is per that Daimler factory they're setting up in Moscow, and Switzerland signing on with BRI. I don't know what this stuff about the Ukraine really is. Where are you going to go if basically everybody around you is going toward the BRICS and the Russian Chinese cooperative? I don't know that it doesn't make economic nor political sense to actually fight against the Russians.
Exactly. That's the reason why this comedian guy won the election, because I guess many of the Ukrainian elites realize that trying to fight that war in the Donbass, saying that, oh, we're going to retake Crimea, is all going to do is antagonize Russia and basically crush Ukraine, because no one in NATO or the European Union is going to come out to fight for Ukraine if there's a shooting war. And Putin has said it, that he would reach Kiev within I don't know, like 3-4 days or whatever. So I guess it's more so the Ukrainians realize that The war that's been going on in the East has been draining resources. There's been a lot of stories of Ukrainian soldiers committing suicide, desertion,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and to what end? So I think it's more so the Ukrainians realize we have to make a deal with Russia to stop this fighting because it doesn't make economic sense. As you said, BGS, that everyone is moving towards Russia. Why are we trying to antagonize Russia? Because if we antagonize them even more, we're going to fight a war one day with them possibly and get crushed. So I think
Yeah,
it's
where would you get your support from? I mean, outside of the
NATO.
United States,
Yeah, it looks like
you know, as long as NATO lasts.
Well, yeah, I mean, but they're building a port right now, right in the western part
Hmm.
of Kiev. So they're building a naval port for the United States. United States already gave them two Coast Guard vessels with some pretty good arms on it. Not sure who put the arms on there, but it looks like the British and the Canadians have been doing a lot of heavy lifting.
yeah, but that's just going to look. The Russians are watching what's going on,
Mm.
and every once in a while they will say, look at this foolishness that they're doing over here, and why don't you just sit down and talk with us instead of doing this foolishness? But all the while, the Russians are isolating Ukraine. If you like, like BJ said, right now Russia is working with Germany, and when Germany started building that factory, I heard nobody in the EU or the US say anything about it. I didn't hear Trump get up on the pulpit and say, "Germans, we're gonna punish you if you build that factory in Russia."
Hmm. It's a Mercedes factory, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was like silence.
yeah,
Putin was there opening the factory and everything. It was
yeah.
like big publicity in Russia.
And plus, the Chinese are actually leased a port inside Germany somewhere. I can't remember exactly where, but
I
they were
thought it
already.
was Italy.
No. They leased. No, it was a port inside. It was a region inside Germany that they're going to lease.
Paul Bryant's in Germany. Do you know anything about this, Paul Bryant?
I have not heard about that. I will definitely look into that.
It was about maybe 3 weeks ago, right before Switzerland signed on to BRI.
Have
When what's his name was there, the Chinese premier.
Hmm.
But you know what? I will say this. You know, this comes back. This comes back to my premise that I keep saying. At the end of the day, the bottom line is the bottom line. So much of what we see that passes for geopolitics, a lot of it is public theater. It's all about power and control. And at the highest levels, if you have the power, you earned yourself a seat at the table. If not, you will get crushed like the insignificant little bug that you are. Putin has shown, whether it's Putin or any of the oligarchs who are pulling his strings, look at what he did in Georgia. Look at what he's done to dissidents within Russia. Look at what he's done to any of these several other former Soviet republics. So it makes zero sense for the Ukraine to in any way antagonize Putin. Now, I understand again about the public theater of being seen as a leader of a sovereign nation and you have to, rattle the saber. I get that. I understand that. But if Putin ever makes that phone call, that is a military battle that's not going to last long. That will not be war. That will be a clinic.
Yeah, Putin has already warned and made a declaration about Ukraine joining NATO. That once you join NATO, all bets are off. We'll come in and we'll take Ukraine in 2 weeks.
Correct. And really quick about what DE said about the EU. I don't know anyone who has been paying attention. You know, Germany is the power behind the EU and has been from day one. So even though he's no longer alive, you could say Hitler's dream of that Third Reich has come to pass.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess it did. Guess it depends how you interpret it.
You're right, right.
Well, underneath the umbrella of the Chinese, I suppose.
Hmm.
Um,
Basically, the EU is actually Each actually formed basically under Pax Americana, NATO, and United States. They actually keep bringing all three of these groups together, those three-legged stools together, and keep them from fighting. So basically, it basically NATO. Basically, that's the reason they actually kept NATO there. The French had to accept a few things after the gold standard crash, and one of those things actually keep NATO in place. So basically, NATO is almost a creation of the United States. I mean, NATO, but the EU is almost a creation of the United States because it couldn't have happened without NATO being there.
It's all CIA built, anyways.
It was yeah, well, yeah, to a point because this actually is well before the CIA.
What you mean,
Yeah.
the EU?
With the EU, it goes all the way back to the European, the ECC. What is it? Steel and something. Back in the 1952 when the first iteration. So basically, this is the EU is just the last iteration of that process. But the process started in 1952, even before the CIA was actually formed.
CIA came to formation in 1949, though.
No,
No,
1947, and the
it was it
CIA.
was it was it was OSI.
It was the OSS, which then became the CIA
It
in
became the CIA.
1947.
CIA. What was CIA was formed?
47,
47. Okay,
Hmm.
the National
but
Security Act. But I will say this: I really don't want to get I really don't want us to get bogged down on that
hmm
minutia, because we're all in overall agreement. So
Yeah, my final point is that Ukraine has a very much a AIDS crisis going on as we speak, and I don't I don't foresee them those ragtag guys actually gearing up for war anytime soon.
wait. Did you say AIDS as an AIDS?
age, demographic
Sorry,
problems.
Or
sorry, sorry.
age and AIDS.
Wow. Okay.
No,
Yeah,
age, the demographic. All of Europe has a demographic problem.
yeah, they have a big bit of a download problem over there. Let me get to this next article. CBS. This one is from CBSNews.com. Whales trained by Russia's military may be harassing fishermen from NATO's ally Norway. Norwegian fishermen and scientists say a white whale wearing a strange harness that harassed boats in the Arctic recently may have been trained by Russia's military. Russia has previously acknowledged training sea mammals for special operations in the frigid Arctic, where the country has a major military base not far from the territory of key NATO member Norway. According to Britain's The Guardian newspaper, the Norwegian state broadcaster NRK reported the unusual behavior of the animal last week and showed video of the beluga whale swimming alongside a fishing vessel and repeatedly nudging it. We were going we were going to put out nets when we saw a whale swimming between the boats. NRK quoted fisherman Horai Heston as saying, "It came over to us as it approached. We saw that it had some sort of harness on it. The harness was removed from the animal by a team of from the Norwegian director of fisheries. Uh, from the agency sent CBS News.
Jorgen.
Jorgen
Yes.
Wig sent CBS News images and video of the whale and the harness, which has a logo on it reading "Equipment of St. Petersburg." The canvas the canvas straps appeared slightly worn, and there was visible rust on the metal screws holding the apparatus together. I've heard about this type of stuff before, um, at least not to this scale, but the idea of actually putting um, remote detonated bombs on sea mammals like this to
hmm
penetrate into dry docks and things like that.
hmm
So, which is a very good strategy. I know that they did find a dolphin with with a tracker or a monitor on it. I believe it might have came from the United States.
hmm
Russia had picked it up.
Yeah, hasn't the United States Navy been reportedly or allegedly working on weaponizing dolphins since the war.
Since
I
the
mean
'60s.
the big war,
Oh yeah.
World War II.
Hmm.
Reportedly, I'm not making claims myself. I'm just asking that question.
Oh yeah.
Pretty sure
They
we've
made
all
tons.
read about
They made tons of movies about it. It's I mean, they've shown it.
it.
They recruit and train dolphins for reconnaissance to plant mines and depth charges on boats and submarines if they can find them. So yeah, this is a very old process.
Right.
Not only dolphins, we've been training what they call it, harbor seals.
Yeah, harbor seals. Yeah.
Harbor seals.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's been reported a long time ago. BGS said in the '60s.
Hmm.
I know they had trained, or at least they made an attempt to train pigeons to carry explosives.
Oh, that's old.
Yeah,
That's bad. That's back in the 18th century,
yeah.
the 17th and 18th century. They're training pigeons to
Hmm.
carry explosives.
Get to this next article.
I got a question that though. Why would the Russians train these when they have the ability now to fly drones and all kinds of electronic equipment?
Well,
On
because
deniability.
the thing is that no, well, it's not on deniability, but the thing is if you put a something on a dolphin or a whale or something like that, when you look at it on sonar, what does it look like?
A dolphin or a whale, and you
Well,
would
yeah,
ignore it.
So you would ignore it.
Hmm.
that's true.
All right, this next one is from Stratfor.com. North Korea, Russia. Kim arrives in Russia for a meeting with Putin. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un arrived in Russia earlier, April 24th, for his first visit to the country, which will include a summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Johan reported. Notably absent from the delegation is North Korea's top nuclear negotiator for talks with the United States, Kim Young Chol, amid reports of his removal as head of an important post. Although the summit is unlikely to deliver any tangible results on economic cooperation, sanctions, or other critical issues for Pyongyang, it will provide an opportunity for North Korea's leader to emphasize continued links outside the United States and China. If confirmed, the removal of Kim Yong Chol could either stem from internal North Korean power politics or indicate an attempt by Pyongyang to reset dialogue with Washington. I think, and I pretty much know this for sure. Russia shares a border with North Korea, and there's been massive efforts by South Korea to get this um, energy pipeline from Russia,
Mm-hmm.
and the only way to get it is to go through North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And what they started last summer was laying down the foundation of the railroad system for moving goods from South Korea up through the north and right through Russia. So
Mm-hmm.
Russia has their own little Belt and Road initiative that they're trying to establish with the South, with South Korea, because they have good relations with them. In exchange for that, the North Koreans would get um, fiber optic cable laid into their country. Plus, they would be to Russia what Ukraine is to Europe for passing energy. So basically, North Korea would get a cut of the pie, and they'll get fast internet service for in terms of infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And North Korea would actually get whole lot of Kia and Hyundai vehicles into their country that they didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
China doesn't like this type of stuff because keeping North Korea down actually is a benefit to China. Whereas
Yeah.
if China has to compete against North Korea, they're kind of screwed because uh, North Korea, with all the sanctions, can still launch rockets, can still develop nuclear technology. That's a big problem for China.
Yeah, but they negotiated this back in the Winter Olympics between the South and the North for
Hmm.
this. They negotiated this during the Winter Olympics. Remember when I think it was Xi and the two premiers from North and South actually met up and actually had this meeting.
Yeah, they sent Kim sent his sister to meet with Trump's.
No, no, I'm talking about. It wasn't Trump. It was in the Winter Olympics where Xi and the two premiers from North and South actually came together,
Mhm.
and broke bread. So this has been negotiated. So China's not against it, in my opinion.
Well, they're not against it, but what I'm saying is it's to their benefit to keep um, North Korea down, at least intellectually and innovatively speaking, because they don't want to have to compete with North Korea from industrialization standpoint.
Why?
Yeah. What do you mean? Why?
Why?
Well, because they stand to benefit. They don't stand to benefit themselves. I mean, they've been sitting high on the hog for quite some time.
Yeah,
Uh,
but but
North
but,
Korea
but
has a lot of resources that China would like to have.
so what's stopping them? They're all in it together. If they're partners, why would that stop them from getting anything? I don't understand. They're not competing against each other. They're all in it together.
Well,
They're not competitive.
the whole entire transportation system isn't going through China; it's going through Russia.
It, basically it's all one system. Why are they competing against each other? China negotiated this. So this is something that they've been talking about what for 2 years. It's something that's been negotiated.
Well, you know what? If I think what Mike is trying to say is,
Uh-huh.
if we're business partners, right, and if I'm doing business with you,
Mm-hmm.
and Mike is my partner,
Mm-hmm.
so we have a three-way partnership. So we're all making money. But I would rather deal with you by myself, so
Mm-hmm.
Mike is not taking money out of my pocket. So
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making money, but if Mike is part of the deal, I'm not making as much as I would if Mike were not also part of this deal. So yes, it's to our mutual benefit that
Mm-hmm.
we're both involved on this, but it would be more so into my benefit if this third partner were not there.
Hmm.
So I mean, what benefit is it to keep basically um, North and South Korea apart and down? If North Korea is down and out and not developed, then it weighs down the whole system. Basically, weighs down the whole system. It's better to have them develop in part of the system rather than outside of it.
Yes and no, because if I am a separate nation,
Hmm.
if said nation is underdeveloped, then I'm the one. I go in there and I build the infrastructure. So I build it, I control it, I make all the money. So now I become the economic controlling factor in that country, not that country itself.
Hmm.
So in other words, so why would so what was the reason for China negotiating the deal, brokering the peace in the first place?
To kick the Americans out, if I remember correctly, some parts of the deal actually um, would have the United States removed out of South Korea, which is what
Hmm.
Trump basically said. Well, no, we're not going to leave. Well, if you're not going to leave, there is no deal to
Hmm.
be made.
Hmm.
North Korea has a lot more natural resources in the ground than China does. China has very little to really work with.
So basically, so if that is the case, that is the case. What is North Korea's reason for brokering the deal, to being part of the deal? What are you giving them?
Are you who you referring to, China or
China, Russia, South Korea, what? Anybody? Why would they do the deal
because
if you're
there's
not
a fair exchange of resources?
fair exchange of resources between who? So them and South Korea, right?
The South and Russia and
I mean, why? So in other words, if China brings North Korea and South Korea together, right? We know what South Korea is going to get, right? What does North Korea get?
uh, manufacturing capabilities,
manufacturing capabilities plus other things, right?
energy.
Plus energy plus other things, right?
Hmm.
Where's the energy lie? Lies where? In Russia, for the most part, right?
Yep.
So basically, China's not against this, in my opinion.
Well, China's not against it, but I'm saying the idea that they're happy about it is far from the truth. Before Xi Jinping came in, um, there was a lot of Chinese internal internal politicians who were
Hmm.
helping out North Korea on the backslide. When
Hmm.
Xi Jinping came in, he got rid of all those people,
Hmm.
and forcing North Koreans to come to the table a different way.
Hmm.
That was their bread and butter. But now that they
Hmm.
don't have it anymore, why take that away from them?
Why take that away from China?
No, why would Xi Jinping and China actually want to take away the bread and butter that kept North Korea actually afloat for all this time?
Well,
Um,
basic. Okay, if you're feeding them, you develop them, and they part integrated in part. You basically you raise the level of comfort for the people, right? For the whole nation, right? Where they're eating better, they're working better, they're integrated into the system. That in itself is basically keeping them to heal because now they're fully invested in the system, just like we are. Because
what
you're
you mean?
paying them off. Basically, if you raise their economic level, basically that actually keeps them even further on the chain because now they're fully invested. Before, right now, North Korea doesn't have much to lose. They don't have nothing, right? All of a sudden, they get something. Now they have something to lose. It's cost of doing business.
Exactly. That one of the things that you gotta consider is that China wants the U.S. out of South Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and if they can get North Korea and South Korea together,
Mm-hmm.
working as a nation, the negotiation will reduce the ability of the U.S. to say, well, we have to be there to protect um, the peace, to
Mm-hmm.
ensure peace. So not only you doing that, but you creating two nations that going to be partners. China don't want see how the United States create antagonism in their backyard in Venezuela. China doesn't do that. China don't like that. The only you see that China tries to do the best to keep that kind of situation from happening.
Or they seem to do it to Taiwan a lot.
Taiwan doesn't want to get on board. Taiwan will never want to get on board.
Yeah, Taiwan is a different
It's a
story.
different story.
Right.
That's like,
Taiwan is the whole
Totally
leadership,
different
the
ball game.
whole
yeah,
royal leadership.
yeah. That's ideological. That is not economic.
Yeah,
Do you think over time that so sorry not to get off topic, but do you think over time Taiwan will be like, okay, maybe we can integrate into China just like Hong Kong did?
What
Does
it really at the end of the day, if China if the stronger China gets economically, militarily, and all that kind of stuff, then what Taiwan does is of no consequence.
mm,
They can stay separate. You can stay a separate nation. Blah blah blah. Whatever he does. But if we want to punish you, we don't need to do it militarily. But we can do it economically.
oh,
We can make you Cuba if we wish.
mm,
And
We
I'll
can make you
add,
Haiti if we wish. It's up to you.
and
Either you cooperate or we're going to destroy you economically. They can do that if they take over because they have nobody to turn to. Go ahead.
right, that would be like the that would be like the movement on Puerto Rico to become a sovereign nation. It sounds good, but that's never going to happen because regardless of everything else here, there in America on the mainland,
Hmm.
Puerto Rico does not have the infrastructure to support itself as a sovereign nation. So that sounds good, but that has as much basis in reality as Taiwan making any kind of moves. There is so much more going on there that's just not even on anyone's radar screen.
Yeah. Plus Taiwan is already what 60-70% economically integrated with the mainland anyway. So at this point, it's just ideological.
mm.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense.
All right, this next one is from CGTN.com. Joint Sea 2019. Chinese Russian Marines hold land competitions. Chinese and Russian Navy Marines have conducted land exercises in the eastern Chinese city of Qingdao. Over 50 Marines from both sides participated in the shooting contest and 400 meters steeplechase. Both navies sent their elite soldiers to compete in the first program of the Joint Sea 2019 exercises on Tuesday. After rounds of contests, the Chinese soldiers won the first prize. The competitions are part of the Joint Sea 2019 exercises held from April 29th to May 4th. Anybody have any opinions on this?
Well, sounds like it sounds a lot of like NATO, NATO,
Yeah.
NATO for Asia, basically. It just shows you that they've been doing this for a while, but it hasn't been public. But now they're just publicly announcing that they're doing military training together. China's getting ready to start asserting itself militarily, whereas before they were trying to hide it.
Mhm.
They're not hiding it anymore, which is, I guess, depending on what side of the fence you're on, something to worry about.
Mhm.
I think the key thing is also that I keep saying that Russia and China learned from the Sinu Soviet split from the 1970s, when Nixon went to China and then
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. I believe like both sides felt like the United States only benefited from that, and
Mm-hmm.
so they want to learn from that mistake, never to let that happen again. That's why you have American foreign policy analysts have this wishful thinking. They try so hard to drive this point that Russia and China's foreign policies uh, 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 end game that don't match, so probably they'll turn against each other. But I don't see that happening. This is more so Russia and China, their relationship getting stronger and stronger. They learned from the 1970s that, hey, if we stay together, we can take down the Western liberal order. Um, I think that's both Russia and China's ultimate goal, to basically replace the Western liberal order with an Eastern order, a new order, multipolarity, and I don't see this relationship fracturing anytime soon. Though these foreign policy guys and foreignpolicy.com, foreign affairs, they're just writing wishful thinking scenarios of a Russia and China turn against each other type of thing, because they both need each other,
Well,
economically and militarily.
why would you throw in a win? Why would you throw away a winning hand?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, Putin's whole position is to just wait it out. Wait out the sanctions, wait out the Ukraine conflict, wait out the Syrian conflict. And at some point, the West will leave, or they'll fold on their own. They can stay. They can withstand the sanctions as long as they need to until China can finish these BRI deals
Mm-hmm.
across the world. Get the
Mm-hmm.
deals done first, and then decide whether or not you're ready for war.
I'd also like to add that
Hmm.
China is a communist country and has been communist for decades. They copied that from the former Soviet Union. All right, the former Soviet Union was led or held by the might and power of Russia. Those ties. So it's not so much a case of strengthening a relationship or forging new bonds. That relationship has never changed. Just because the Soviet Union broke up, Russia never went anywhere. It's still there, despite all the economic problems and the upheavals. The oligarchs who ran the Central Party, they never went anywhere. So that relationship between Russia and China has never wavered, it has never changed, and it is just as strong. Now, where things have changed is that, China has basically created its own seat at the table. It is a world economic superpower. It's clearly on the road to becoming a military superpower as well. We can debate the strength and merits thereof, but clearly, superpower on both fronts, economically and militarily. So, you know, geopolitics, as the old saying goes, politics makes for strange bedfellows.
Yeah. Well, basically, essentially, the West had one chance to actually bring Russia, the former Soviet Union, back into the fold. That's right after the collapse. After the Soviet Union collapsed, and they could have sent them aid. They could have helped them back on their feet. They could have strengthened them economically. Guess what they did? They went in and raped them. They
Yeah,
took advantage of them.
Yeah, you're right.
plundered the country. That's
They
what brought
plundered the
Putin back
country.
to that's what
That's what
brought
brought.
Putin back to power.
Hmm.
100%.
So
Yep.
basically, so why would Russia um, throw in a winning hand for what? They did that once, and guess what happened to them?
Mm.
You turned their country into the shithole.
Yep. They were hoping that Putin would be just like Yeltsin without the alcohol, but he was.
Everybody,
That's
they all know who Putin is. They know who Putin is. Putin basically is a Prussian. He's Prussian royalty, and everybody knows it.
Well, Putin, well, anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. I'm done.
All right, this next one's from BusinessInsider.com. China is building a powerful navy to take on the U.S. in the Pacific. Here's what its arsenal looks like. The Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, is one of the largest naval forces in the world, and it continues to grow. More importantly, though, China is rapidly building and fielding increasingly capable naval vessels, weapons that could tip the scales in the U.S. dominated Pacific. The Chinese PLAN has probably benefited the most from the country's major military modernization plan, the goal of which is to transform the Chinese armed services into a world class fighting force capable of defeating another great power. In the mid 1990s, Chinese naval forces were weak, consisting of an almost entirely defenseless collection of just under 60 destroyers and frigates and 80 attack submarines, most of which were old diesel electric Soviet models. The Chinese Navy also had a few nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, but they were extremely noisy. Rancourt said in a report on the development of the PLAN over the past few decades. But the nature of China's navy is changing, both in terms of size and capability, as the PLAN equips its ever expanding fleet with more advanced weapons and sensors. China has been churning ships out at an incredible rate. In
Hmm.
2016 and 2017, China commissioned 18 and 14 ships, respectively. Some some other observers have put that number even higher. I've heard it was 24. The U.S. Navy commissioned only 5 and 8 ships during those years.
Hmm.
As of last year, China had more than 300 ships, far more than the U.S. Navy. The Center for Strategic and International Studies predicts that China could have as many as 430 surface ships and 100 submarines within the next 15 years, if not sooner. I've heard it was 2022. So
Hmm.
let me just go over these ships real quick. Conventional and nuclear submarines, they have them. Type 022 missile boats. They gave quite a few of those to the Iranians and the Pakistanis recently.
Hmm.
Type 056 Qingdao corvettes, 054 frigates, Type 52 Luang destroyers, more destroyers, Type 55, 901 support ships, Type 075 helicopter landing ship. These are pretty recent. Amphibious transport ships, aircraft carrier, So, Paul Bryant, swing to you first. What's your take on this?
Well, my take on this is several. As I said, China is definitely trying to become a military superpower. Um, they're looking to obviously out out volumize the United States Navy. As regards to the carriers specifically, they only have one operational carrier, which was they bought a old diesel electric powered carrier from Russia. They slightly updated it. It's not a fleet carrier in that it has a ski jump. It only holds a limited number of jets. It does not have the capabilities, the carrying capabilities of the United States' fleet carriers. With that said, my caveat is this: China has not fought a modern naval war. The United States has. Now, the last modern naval war anywhere on Earth outside of the Falklands was World War II. But that knowledge and experience has been passed down through training and equipment and the military tech. So, what I would say, if the United States and China were to engage in naval warfare, which I personally still don't see happening, but if that were to happen,
Mhm.
I don't know, honestly, how things are going to turn out. I'm well aware of the notion that America hasn't fought a war in how many decades and they're going to lose to the Chinese. I don't know. Just because you have new technology, which is so far unproven, with zero experience and expertise in using it, in no way guarantees success. The U.S. also hasn't fought in decades, but they do have the experience which has been passed down through knowledge and training. So if that were to happen, I personally would still give the edge to the United States Navy. Not a clear, decisive edge, but the edge nonetheless. Also, the ability to project power, which is what an aircraft carrier does. China still cannot do so effectively with their one diesel electric powered carrier, which is not even a fleet carrier.
Three.
So personally,
Yeah, yeah, three. Okay.
I give well technically the other two one is still in dry dock, the other one is still undergoing sea trials. So
Hmm.
it has
They,
not been commissioned for service yet.
they gave the
Um,
other one to Pakistan.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That
we covered an article about that a couple months ago. They gave
Hmm.
the
okay.
other one to Pakistan to
I
And
protect
missed.
power against India.
But again, I all I'm saying personally is I still give a slight edge, albeit slight. I cannot say that yeah the U.S. is going to beat China or China would beat the U.S. Personally, I can't call it either way. I can't because the technological gap is very close, very
well,
close.
the Army War College already said that the U.S. would lose. They did it 10 times.
That was recent too.
Yeah.
NATO. We I don't know
Hmm.
if we covered the article or
You
not, but
did. I think you did.
yeah, NATO was doing some training exercise about 2 weeks ago or a month or so ago, and basically said United States is not, well, at least NATO is not ready for a conflict with Russia or China because the objective now is to step to China and stop them from pushing their BRI initiative. They see China as a threat, and NATO is saying that we need to do something about this. But
Yeah.
in reality, they are not ready for a conflict with China or Russia or the
Yeah.
both combined.
They're both
Uh,
combined. It's both combined.
Oh
It's the
yeah,
problem.
correct. Yeah, NATO naval forces of the European navies of NATO. They're not ready. Whether it be lack of technology, it's definitely lack of ships. I mean, even Britain, the once vaunted British Navy, has less than 50 operational ships as we speak.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah. They did the Army War College, and I think it was another group that actually did war simulations. They actually do
Mm.
simulations,
Mhm.
and they said that they did it. They ran 10 simulations, and basically, Russia and China won every time.
Versus who?
U.S. versus United States, straight up.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And
I
Okay.
think
also,
Go right ahead. Go right ahead, Zoe. Go right ahead.
Yeah,
And plus, on top of that, that there was a war game scenario of a U.S. versus Iran war in the Persian Gulf. I forgot the name of it. BGS may know, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the U.S. was the red team, Iran was the blue team, and the blue team like crushed the United States. So even Iran, who doesn't have a modern navy, but their whole war strategy is basically asymmetrical warfare, would defeat the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And Iran learned their asymmetrical naval warfare from who? China.
Yeah.
China's the master of asymmetrical naval warfare.
Yeah.
So
which
If
does come back to what I said. Even though the U.S. has that history of naval warfare, that was decades ago. So it has been passed down through, training and exercise and every, every everything else. But all the training and exercises in the world does not make up for lack of actual experience.
yeah.
You
In
know,
fact,
so
that I think it was the Joint Chiefs actually invited a Filipino rebel. He was a
mhm.
general. I think was it forget what his name was, but in fact, I actually played it on one of my channels where I actually talked about it. This was back in, I think it was 2004, 2005, where actually gave his presentation about asymmetrical war.
Hmm.
So they talked about this, you know, what is it, 15 years ago. And he was warning back then that asymmetrical war, the United States wasn't prepared to fight.
You know, the Black Brain Trust covered an article about 2 or 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago now,
Hmm.
that correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. Russia has hypersonic missiles or projectiles. I want to say
Hmm.
missiles, hypersonic missiles
Agreed.
Hmm.
that U.S. fleet carriers will not be able to stop. By the time they even see them on their radar screens, they have less than 2 minutes until impact.
Even if they did, even if they could see him, there's nothing. They don't have a response to it.
Correct.
They
Correct.
have zero
So
response to something like that.
right.
We
So
covered an article before
Hmm.
with some new supersonic missiles that Russia was testing, man, and it the impact that that missile had on that warship, it completely knocked it upside down. It was a frigate.
yeah, that was eye opening to say the least.
Yeah.
But it didn't hit the weapon. That actually didn't hit the ship.
Come
I beg your pardon.
say it
I
again,
don't
D.
think the weapon actually. I don't think the round actually hit the ship. It hit the water, and the ship just rolled over.
Right. So I was just saying the impact of the weapon itself knocked the ship right over.
Mm.
Now, see, my one of the things that I question, not the article, but um, the DoD said that the new Ford class carriers are the first U.S. warships that were designed to carry directed energy weapons, and that the Ford was mounted with four of them, and that there were a handful of new ships that were being retrofitted with the mounts and the power supplies for them. So, if you're telling me that we basically have real world phasers, directed energy weapons, but that's your only response for these hypersonic missiles, you know,
That's
the
a hit and miss.
power and effectiveness of fleet carriers,
Mhm.
it's not looking too good.
Yeah, it's a hit and miss because China just put out one last week. I don't. We didn't cover the article, but it came out after we did the geopolitics hangout. They put out their phaser as well on their latest warships. So um, China is matching up. I mean, they've already breached all of your U.S. military
Hmm.
systems, anyways. We covered an article some months ago, probably 6 months ago, about.
Oh, Mike, I apologize for cutting you off.
Go ahead, brother.
Could you please put that article back up that you were just showing about the Chinese Navy? There was something that I wanted to point out to you.
Let me get to it.
Okay.
What I was saying was that they've already breached all your systems, so they got all of your naval systems, and now they know all of your naval operations for your submarines. And if I'm a U.S. Submariner, I would not want to be or submariner. I would not want to be on a U.S. Navy sub right now. They know everything about them.
But the
That's a
problem,
damn thing.
one of the problems that we have is that we don't produce our electronic warfare equipment.
You
All,
can't. You,
all, all the
you- it's
equipment,
you can't. Yeah.
the insides for the equipment is made by China.
Yeah, you can't. That was which is one of the reasons they wanted to keep control of China, because that's where all of your advanced technology is actually going to go. It has to be um, manufactured,
Hmm.
because the toxins and stuff was actually too poisonous to actually produce here. It had to be produced someplace else. Asia was that spot, which is the real reason they wanted to keep a hold of China. It has nothing to do with oil. The thing is, that is the place where your technology was actually shipped to, because it couldn't be produced here.
Hmm.
Now, they knew this dog was going to come back to bite them if he got off the leash.
All right, let me get to this next one. BusinessInsider.com. China's aircraft carriers have a boatload of glaring weaknesses, but the next carrier could be a huge step forward. The capabilities of China's current carrier force are severely limited by several serious weaknesses, making it vastly inferior to the U.S. Navy. But the one it has in the works is where the world could start to see the Chinese Navy closing the gap with its primary competitor. China's only China only has one aircraft carrier, the Type 001 Liangling,
Hmm.
and service, but the carrier, known as the sister ship of Russia's Admiral Kuznetsov aircraft carrier, recognized as one of the worst carriers in the world, is not very surprising, not very impressive, said Matthew Hunwald,
Hmm.
a fellow with the China Power Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Originally a Soviet heavy aircraft carrier, heavy aircraft carrying cruiser, China's obtained China obtained the vessel from the Ukraine under questionable circumstances in the late 1990s, upgraded and retrofitted or refitted it domestically over the next decade, and officially commissioned it into the People's Liberation Navy in 2012. What do you want to point out on this one, Paul Bryant?
Yeah, I wanted to point out that even the fact that China only has one carrier in service,
Hmm.
and it is decades out of date with vastly inferior technology. Everything else that China has seems to make up for the fact that this carrier is not even on the same playing field as the U.S. fleet carriers. The U.S. fleet carriers are playing a completely different game than this one carrier that China has. But all of the other military technology far than makes up for it. So China militarily, excuse me, for all the people who feel that what is China trying to do, what is their quality, this is not a commercial product where China's commercial, the large majority of China's commercial products that come here are of shit quality. We're talking their military hardware. Their military hardware, beyond this one carrier, is every bit on the same level as anything coming out of the DoD. And I think that people are vastly underestimating the military might that China has.
You know what's interesting? We covered an article probably in March, early March, where U.S. military has discovered that there's a particular city unlisted in China that is used for taking down satellites, U.S. satellites. And the question was, should they go in there and take out take out that that station that they have set up, that they discovered, and how much risk would it, how much blowback would it be, right? What's your risk appetite for that?
Right. Yeah. You know what?
China's a bit of a Rubik's cube when it comes to military warfare, because it's so vast in width, right? From east to west, it's just so vast. It goes from the East China Sea all the way back into goddamn Vietnam somewhere, close
Hmm.
to India. It's just so vast. and then on top of that, they share a border with Russia. And Russia just recently put a military base there, at that outside of Vladivostok. So,
Ru-
but
No, no. I'm sorry.
I was just saying that there's a high probability that a war in the Pacific could be very nasty for the United States because they're so far away from home. They'll be chasing the U.S. all the way back to Hawaii, with their tail between their legs because they'll take out Guam, which is one of the main objectives for the Russians and the Chinese, and they'll probably try to take out Australia as well or try to neutralize it for the most part, keep them from responding as well because their white brethren, pale-faced brethren, in that area decide that they feel froggy, they want to jump up there and they want smoke, they'll probably get put down really fast.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it could be very interesting to see how this plays out. To really see how this plays out. That the edge that the United States military has for decades and enjoyed, I do not think that that edge is there. I really don't. I really think that China very rapidly has achieved military hardware parity with anything that the U.S. has, unless the U.S. has something that we're just not seeing, that they're not talking about, that they're out and out denying. Short of that, you know, I really think China has very rapidly leveled this playing field.
Yeah,
One of the
And one other thing too.
go ahead,
Uh,
brother. Go ahead.
I think you guys have also. Good evening, panel. How you guys doing?
Good, brother.
Hey, what's going
What's
on?
up, Nagone? Yo, G.
What's going on, Paul? Auf Wiedersehen,
Auf,
huh?
auf Wiedersehen, mein Bruder.
Auf Wiedersehen, my brother. All right. Yeah. Also, there is an how will we say there's an intelligence edge that China might have as well. So I mean, I think you guys were mentioning that a little bit before, but China's got a lot of intel on the United States. They say they know where our subs are, they know where our major, where our fleets are going to be moving. They have a lot of information on us. So that is another thing that we have to sit down and look at as far as warfare, as far as foreknowledge and knowing what the enemy might do. So they've got a big edge there as well. So I think a lot of that has cut us back in large respects. It has mitigated our position.
yeah,
The last time China got into a conflict was back in 2016, I think, in Africa. That was the last time they had any sort of major military conflict with insurgency. That's never head on with another military since 1979 in Vietnam. But in Africa, they've been scrapping it out due to the fact that they're doing a lot of peacekeeping and stuff like that.
Well, one of the concerns about a carrier battle group,
Hmm.
when that carrier battle group is out, they're relying on command and control from U.S. CENTCOM. So that's satellite communications. If those satellite communications are hacked, all right, then someone can do the same thing to the U.S. that the U.S. has specialized in for decades,
hmm
removing command and control. Because once you eliminate command and control, you no longer have an effective fighting force. What you have are individual, disparate fighting groups. And that is chaos for any military.
yeah. I think China's actually trying to discourage. They're actually building up to actually discourage a war. Because China's like, um, I would say like 30 years ahead of its own timetable.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You're right
Yep,
about that. That's true.
that's very true. Yep.
That
So
would
the
be
thing is,
accurate.
that unless U.S. has a plan to actually outweight or battle China for the next 30 years over control, basically, all they're doing is playing for time right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You're playing for position. You basically playing to negotiate. You're actually going to basically negotiate your own settlement. Okay, we will we actually get this from China or get this amount of concessions from China. We're actually going to cede power
Hmm.
at this
Yeah.
pace, at this rate.
I mean, and there are a lot of things, economically. China's also holding a lot of our debt as well. I mean, they are. They're holding a lot of U.S. treasuries. They're holding a lot of our debt. That's part of our deal we kind of cut with them some years ago. We'll buy your goods. You'll pick up a lot of our debt, and that's kind of a deal, even though it's been a bit of an uneasy deal. We're there as we are there as well, so they could cause some economic issues here from an economic warfare perspective as well. So China's really not a player that we really want to get in that type of symmetrical conflict with. And when we start to look at where China has trumped us, pardon the pun, they trumped us is where they have actually moved to some very key strategic areas that we kind of left a little bit open, and they've dug in. And we're talking about Africa. They're there.
Yes.
And they're making stronger moves in Asia. That's kind of walled us off to a degree. So there's a lot going on here. This is a kind of a complex dance we're doing, but warfare is not going to be the answer, because we cannot really sit down and truly determine if we could win this thing in a symmetrical way.
What
do you think, BGS?
What else do you have? What other card do you have to play?
Kidnap the daughter of a CEO or a founding member of Huawei. Kidnap a princess. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean that'll buy you something, but basically at the end of the day, the Chinese don't care. If you kill her, you kill her.
You know what?
Yeah.
You guys.
I'd like to remind you of the very old. Well, I'm sorry, not old saying, but there is an old saying. War is the continuation of politics by other means.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That's it. What is Clausewitz?
Von Clausewitz.
Clausewitz said that, but Sun Tzu said that as well. He did say, that all warfare, is based on deception and so forth. But yet, it's a political affair. It deals with the sovereignty and the health of the state. So it is politics. And in fact, warfare from the Chinese perspective, going with naked blades and swinging and cutting, that's the last option that you want to take. You will actually want to use other methods in order to take
in other words, they want to inherit the system, not tear it up. Warfare will start tearing up the system.
I don't know if you guys know about the game called Go.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese play Go.
Mm-hmm.
And we play chess. We sacrifice. Chinese don't like sacrificing. The Chinese like to put you in a position where you're surrounded, and they take their time doing it. That's what Go does.
Mm-hmm.
Go is a game that it takes you weeks to play, but eventually you get surrounded, and you have no place to go. We got aircraft carriers that sail the ocean, but every weapon that the Chinese, well, not every weapon, but that's one of the things that the Chinese and the Russians focus on. How to take out those carriers and make them null and void in any war.
Exactly, because
put nuclear weapons right up against Russia and China, and claiming that they're doing it because of Iran. And the Russians know it. That's one of the bargaining chips that BGS is talking about. Yeah, they're trying to put those in place so that people got a bargain to get them out of there.
Mm-hmm.
What do we get for it?
Yeah,
that's the game the U.S. is playing right now.
Venezuela is a bargaining chip, for the Russians and the Chinas. See if the United States has enough will give up enough to actually get it back. I don't think they will.
I'd like to throw a curveball into this discussion as well, because a few days ago, a brother who I met a few days ago, and like myself, he lived and worked in Africa for under 2 years. He's traveled around the world, and we were discussing something that I came across in 1995. That the WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, and there were other powers and principalities around the world were looking to control the world's water supply. Okay, this is something that no one is talking about.
The Lush Group actually talked about that back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Correct. And it's something that I have been looking at since I was given some material, much like the spook who sat by the door. I was given material, and I've been looking at this and researching it. And the curveball that I'm going to throw into this conversation, China, with its Belt and Roads Initiative
Mm-hmm.
on the continent of Africa is
Mm-hmm.
making that move to control the water supply on the continent of Africa. There
Mm-hmm.
are other powers that be globally that are looking to control the water supply. You look at Nestle, you look at Dole and a few other companies that are
Mm-hmm.
down in South America looking to control the water supply
Mm-hmm.
because the prediction of the material that I saw in 1995, the
Mm-hmm.
prediction was that by the year 2030,
Mm-hmm.
between 2030 to 2050, the goal was to control 95% of the world's water supply
Mm-hmm.
because wars will no longer be fought over oil, gold, and diamonds,
Right.
but control of fresh water.
That's true. With it, but they are- they said a lot of things back in the mid 90s about what they were planning on. But the thing is, guess who threw the big monkey wrench in the whole plan? China. The rise of China actually threw the monkey wrench in all those plans.
China
Every last
fucked.
one of them.
China
China
fucked a
flipped
lot of
all.
shit. They fucked a
Nagone can
lot of
tell
shit
you.
up.
I
Nagone
would
can
agree
tell
with
you.
that 1,000%.
Yeah,
I agree with that a
Nagone can tell
thousand
you.
percent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the basically the Shanghai Cooperative, basically China, basically bailing out Russia and bringing those two uh, communist countries or whatever you want to call them, authoritarian countries back together again through a whole big old whole monkey wrench and everything.
It's massively, and then are trying to set up their own
Hmm.
economic system
Yeah,
behind it. I mean, there's a
yeah,
lot of very heavy duty, funky stuff
yeah,
going
yeah,
on right now.
yeah, yeah. The
What?
Western oligarchs had plans to actually move the whole entire. Nagone can probably tell you because he's a trader, right? They were planning to move the whole entire manufacturing bases of the West to China
Yeah, well,
back in the 90s.
yeah.
That was the deal.
That
So
was the plan.
China will get all the manufacturing,
Yeah.
and China will have access to everything in Africa,
Well,
all the raw materials that they ever want. That was the deal.
think about it. Think about it. A country, a authoritarian country with 1.5 billion people, with all the manufacturing, all the technology, all the weapons, and a 5 million man army.
Mm.
Mm.
Sounds like
Yeah,
it sounds like Byzantium after the
It, it,
Romans left
it,
Rome.
exactly.
it certainly does.
It
Hmm.
does sound like the Byzantine Empire, but
That's what it
It certainly
was.
does.
You
It
know
Yeah.
what?
certainly
I'll
does.
I'll say I'll say this. I was watching of all things, I was watching the Grand Tour on Amazon, and one of the episodes was set in a city in China. It's literally a brand new city that has been
Hmm.
built in under a handful of years. The
Hmm.
architecture and the rate at which the Chinese government is building up this city. I mean, it is an absolutely beautiful, stunning city in the
Hmm.
middle of nowhere. I mean, they cleared out mountains and they're building highways, super highways, artificial rivers,
Hmm.
70, 80-story skyscrapers. China China has definitely just bullied their way onto the global stage. And there are, I said, modern cities that
Hmm.
people have no clue about growing
Hmm.
up. Right? People are even still grossly underestimating the impacts and the direction that China has.
Now, I think they used to. I don't think so anymore. Basically, China's actually forced to accelerate its rate of development. They're forced to. They actually wanted a slower curve, but the United States actually forced them actually vastly accelerating what they wanted to do.
hmm.
They even make U.S. military uniforms as well.
Oh yeah, flags, uniforms, yeah, you
Get out
name
of
it.
town.
Yeah. All
Talk
the
about a declining empire. Talk about a declining empire. Jesus.
well, yeah.
I
There's a
wouldn't
lot
say
of reasons.
this, Zoe. I wouldn't say that. Lessening influence, absolutely. Declining, I'm not ready to go that far yet.
Well, all the military guys I talk to already say so.
Well,
I think another.
they'll stop them from getting pork and soybeans. That will teach those guys a lesson.
Something, but think if you look at Western, look at all the indicators for empire, right? Um, a rising group of young people, rising uh, economic power, rising military power. Um, is the United States rising or declining?
No, I said it's definitely weakening. Absolutely.
That is declining.
Absolutely. But
Compared to where they were, they're losing ground. They're losing they're losing power, and that spells decline. You know, whether they can stop the decline and reverse it, we'll see. But
yeah,
so
we'll
far,
see. We'll see. We
but the
definitely will see.
number,
But
but the
where they
numbers,
were, no.
the numbers don't look good because demographically, economically and demographically, it's unsustainable.
It's
But you
unsustainable.
know
Yep.
what? I'll say this. Uh, Nagone and I can absolutely have an quote unquote insider's perspective on why the numbers don't look good at all. But that's another one of the reasons why I got out and I left, hopped on a plane, and relocated.
Well, there's still one. There's still one ace. There's still one card on the deck, and that's China trying to get that naval port made in Lower Mexico.
That's it. That's it. I don't believe that's going to happen in this hemisphere.
Not this time. So that would be a huge red flag, man.
Huge,
huge
The
red
U.S. will go
flag.
to war over that.
They will go to war.
They would go to war over that.
Yeah, they would go.
Monroe Doctrine.
The Monroe Doctrine.
You think Venezuela's bad? You put up a Chinese naval base in Mexico.
Not going to fucking happen.
Nah,
We will avoid that
Operation.
before.
Well, a few years ago. Go ahead, Beatrice.
Yeah, but basically, if you they built a port. They built a port in Mexico, a couple of ports in Mexico already,
Yep.
but never a naval base. Basically, United States allows that. They might have been over and touched their toes.
Exactly. A port is one thing. A naval base is a whole
nother story.
game
Yep.
altogether. Totally different.
Yeah, and there was also discussions maybe about 2 years ago about putting an actual rapid response base in Jamaica outside of Kingston. So
Yeah. The Chinese were trying to do that, but you saw what happened. What we started to do with Jamaica when the Cubans started rolling over there. You saw how that game was played.
Yeah.
So,
They're gonna see what they're gonna see what they can get away with. They're always
yeah.
They don't expect to get away with it, but the thing is, they're gonna try to see what you're gonna allow.
Yeah, they brought the Jamaican ministry all the way down to Beijing for a state visit, and that was some of the discussion that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
This was when Obama was in power, his last few days. So
they're gonna see what they're going to see what they can get away with. Like I said, I quote Jeremy Irons all the time. There's 3 ways to make money in this business: be first, be smarter, or cheat. China does all 3. And they do it very well.
Yeah, I don't think the Jamaicans are ready to put down their oxtail, pick up an AK-47.
Oh my God!
I don't think China is they're gonna probe to see what you're gonna allow. But if they get certain things, they get pushed back on, they're gonna just nix the deal. Okay, we can't get away with that right now, so we're gonna actually put that back on the table and go to someplace else. But they're always gonna probe to see where your weaknesses are. So they're nothing except constant or relentless.
Yeah. Well, I think the one key thing that will probably make China even more brazen, because they're dominating AI. AI warfare is the next wave. So if China surpasses the U.S. in AI, I mean, China could just go full steam ahead, like start provoking the United States, because that's one thing that the United States is lagging behind AI technology, because the Chinese they're determined to be the AI power for the remainder of the 21st century.
You would have to be. You would have to be. In this age, you have to be. Putin already talked about this last year, that whoever controls AI controls the world, and that's why he's investing he's investing lots of resources into Russian millennials so that they can master AI and not be left behind. Germany has talked about this. Japan has talked about this. All the members in the G20 has talked about this. And the United States isn't that far behind. They're actually like the number 3 or number 4, probably this year in terms of AI development. But China is in the top 2. So
if you're China, would you want to provoke a war with the United States? You don't even if you were a leader, if I, in my opinion, if China was in the position of the United States, I don't think they would try to provoke a war with China. You know, if we switch things around,
What is
China would try to provoke war.
what's the benefit of provoking for China to provoke a war with the United States?
So
I mean, kick the U.S. out of the Pacific. I mean, have their own Monroe Doctrine in the Pacific.
not
What,
really.
to provoke a war when you're going to get it anyway over time?
True. Yeah.
Wait it out.
Wait it out. They're 30 years ahead of time. They're in no rush. The only reason they're rushing is because United States, sad to say, is screwing up.
Yeah. They can wait us out. They can definitely wait us out. You know, the only
Did we lose Nagone?
He borged out.
You don't have.
You're borging out, Nagone.
So the only time. I don't know why I'm doing that. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, got you, Nagone.
I don't know why I'm borging. Okay. I'm just saying, you know, there's no benefit to war, you know, unless that's your last option.
They have options.
They have options.
I'll be right back, y'all.
Quite a few.
All right, let me get to this next one.
There's also a cycle to rulership, and the faster you rise, your rulership comes to an end quickly.
All right, let me get to this next article. All right, this next one is from RT.com. Belt and Road to make Russia-China trade more balanced, experts to RT. Russia and China complement one another economically, according to political scientist Joseph Chang. He said the two countries' trade could become even more balanced with the help of the Belt and Road Initiative. Speaking to RT ahead of Russian President Vladimir Putin's arrival to Beijing on Thursday, he said that Russia's role is very important, particularly due to its significant natural resources. Certainly, Russia is a major exporter of natural resources, especially energy resources, and China needs that badly. The retired professor of the City University of Hong Kong said. He explained that Russia's supplies of natural resources reduce China's dependency on the Middle East, on trade routes from the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and across the Indian Ocean to China's coast. The Belt and Road project gives a lot of opportunity for the trade to become balanced, he said. International financial expert Andrew Luang also spoke to RT, saying that right from the start, Russia features significantly in the Belt and Road. According to him, Russia is important as a large energy supplier and as a geopolitical counterweight to America's global pushback against China. There is much synergy with the Russia-led Eurasia Economic Union, EEU, he said. The Belt and Road links virtually all countries in the EEU, including landlocked nations in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, co-founded by Russia and China. The Belt and Road regional infrastructure links are set to unlock the economic and human potential of the Eurasia Economic Union to the benefit of all, said the strategist. The second Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation will be held in China on April 25th to the 27th. The Russian president, who arrived in Beijing on Thursday, will hold a series of meetings, including with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Putin told China's Reminin Ribao newspaper ahead of the visit that the ties between Russia and China are at their highest point in the entire 70-year history of diplomatic relations and will continue to develop steadily. Russia is a strategic partner with China. You all can jump in right now.
That article is right on target. Seriously, it's like, but the problem is that the U.S. didn't see their actions causing this. They thought the the plan that they had for a new American century was they thought they were going to surround Russia and China and force them into a subservient position, and they lost.
I think this just really backs up everything that we've been kind of talking about.
Nagolin, I think you're breaking up a lot.
Just backs it up. Oh wow. Let me see something. Oh, can you hear me better right now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it just backs up everything that we were saying before. I just think this just really just solidifies it more. That's all.
Okay.
I think the key thing too is the U.S. The reason why the U.S. the American century died. The idea of the American century died was the U.S. just got bogged down in the Middle East, in Afghanistan, and Iraq, and then Syria, and then now Trump is trying to antagonize things with Iran. Is just while the U.S. was being bogged down in these insurgent wars, the war on terrorism, China and Russia were getting stronger militarily and economically, and now the U.S. is trying to pull out from the Middle East, and there's the result. That's one of the reasons why Obama did the Iran nuclear deal, because he realized that we can't be in the Middle East forever. We spent $6 trillion for nothing, and meanwhile China's getting much stronger. The longer we get bogged down in the Middle East, at some point China is gonna be so strong it's gonna surpass the United States, and yeah, and there's just been so much grave miscalculations. I think it's also arrogance. Also, the U.S. came out of the Cold War thinking like we are the shit. They're like, yo, we're the top dogs right now. Nobody's gonna fuck with us. Blah blah blah. But then 9/11 happened, and then they got bogged down. And now it's like what always say: the U.S. is like that old quarterback that's like you had two ACL injuries. It's not the same. I mean, the United States is basically like Brett Favre, almost at the end of his career, before he went to the Jets.
Yeah,
I
but
would have said he was Ben Roethlisberger.
yeah, but
yeah, okay.
but the wars in the Middle East that you said that the U.S. were bogged down, that was the plan. If you looked at the product for the new American century, that was always the plan to go to the Arab countries and stay there with to to quote the term unending wars to the benefit of the military industrial complex. I think if one looks at it, what went wrong was the rise of China, so that the idea of staying in the Arab countries now, being that China is on the playing field and doing things differently, the plan of being there no longer worked, no longer became viable.
Right on the money. It's exactly what happened. And we did not count on seeing China rise the way they did, and that whole unending war, perpetual warfare game that we will. That's an economy. It's an industry. It's not playing well for us right now, and we have to reshift our game midstream, and that's where I think the foresight, the long-sighted thinking of our leadership. These guys were stupid, short-sighted, and greedy, and that's where we are left right now. So I have to agree with Paul all the way on that. That's dead on the
The,
money. That's exactly what's happening.
the U.S. was warned not to do what they did in China. They were warned. A, a guy named Quigley wrote a book about
Oh, you know that guy?
it.
Heard of that guy before.
he, warned, he warned them, if you go to China, you're gonna give the power to the Chinese, and the Chinese don't act with like you want them to act. They're not the greedy capitalists that they're capitalists, yeah, but they don't go after profits at any cost. They go after profits with country, and they will rise, and they're gonna take what you have. He warned them about that, but they, in their ignorance or their bravado, thought that they could, you know what, we can control China. what we'll do is we'll put our corporations inside there. They will be the driving force. China will have to go along with that. Guess what China did? Come on, bring your corporations in. Guess what? They took the technology. Okay, we if you want to do business in China, you gotta share your technology with us. By the time they got in and found out that they can't get back out, it was too late. So what China, what the U.S. and their allies decided to do? Okay, we're gonna start trying to limit China by what we're gonna keep them from getting oil. If we can control the oil, if we can control the raw materials, guess what? China and Russia got together, let them into the Middle East. They fought and fought and fought and fought, spent a lot of money, and then realized that China was doing something in the Far East.
China also stole.
So now
China also stole a lot
Obama
of.
had,
China also stole a lot of
Obama
our
had to do the
technology.
pivot. By the time he did the pivot, they had spent $4 trillion in the Middle East.
Well, China also stole a lot of our technology. China had a much more
That's
longer term view in some other areas, and they looked to counter a lot of what we were doing economically.
it wasn't stolen.
I mean,
a lot of it was stolen.
Yeah, DE, it was stolen. It was stolen. That's how Huawei was built. Huawei was built off of Nortel's technology, intellectual patents, and they stole a lot of that stuff and drained the company for what it was worth.
Absolutely. DE is just, he's just not up on this stuff.
What I'm saying is, did they steal?
He's not looking at it.
What I'm saying, did
that
they
is just a
steal it,
natural part
or
of the
did
game.
Nortel have to turn over? Did Nortel have to? When Nortel decided that they're gonna build this equipment in China, they took all this technology, all this information into China.
Yeah, but also, well, they do both.
So
Okay.
they expose it to the Chinese.
They take a lot. I mean, they stole a lot of stuff. Even our stealth fighter, we saw mock up. They had we saw a mock up that they were building in one of the hangars from outer space. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, these guys are rock and roll. Get up on the game, man. Take a look at what this is all about.
They're still stealing technology as we speak.
They're stealing from the Europeans too. They're relentless.
Absolutely.
They're stealing a lot from the Europeans, especially from BMW and Mercedes and
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Siemens, German company Siemens.
The Siemens, yeah, because my brother, I have a half brother in Germany who
I understand what you guys say. I understand what you guys say.
Who work for Siemens.
I understand what you guys are saying, right? But if I have
this guy's talking.
If I had this new technology, and I say, well, look, I want to produce mine at the cheapest cost there is, and China is the only place that I can produce anything. So I go to China, and the Chinese are making it. Chinese people. I'm not taking my own people there to make it. Chinese people are making it. So they are learning the technology. I have to show them how to make it. So
they're nationalists. You're right. You're right. What you're saying, they're nationalists. But most of these companies that are in opposition to the West are nationalists. We have the same problem with the Russians being nationalists and stealing technology from us at work as well. We have to kind of watch them closely because they have no problem standing for their own people, unlike black people.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think Edward Snowden was doing and why he ran?
What do you mean?
Edward Snowden was stealing technology, stealing secrets, technology. What do you think he was doing? They're still stealing. They do. Like I said, they're first. They're smarter and they cheat. So they actually getting it through technology swaps. They're actually outright buying it, and they're also stealing it. They're doing all three. It's not one thing that they're doing. They're doing all three.
Well, you know what, BGS,
Go ahead.
I remember when I was in the Air Force.
The Russians were 22 years ahead, 25 years ahead of the Americans in terms of rocket technology in World War I and World War II. So they were stealing it.
It was the Germans, not the Russians.
What are you saying, Paul Bryant?
It was the Russians that were leading the world with rocket technology, thanks to Werner von Braun, not the Russians. Everything that
the Germans.
Correct. Everything that the Russians learned from rocket technology, they got Werner von Braun, and half of his scientists came to the U.S. The other half of his scientists went to Russia.
We went to Russia. That's exactly how that broke up. And remember, Goddard, he was the first guy to sit down and lay out the whole rocket technology game. And we rejected it. And Werner von Braun and the rest of them over there, they said, Americans are fucking up. We're going to take this.
Because it was Werner von Braun who created NASA. Werner von
He
Braun.
created NASA.
He created NASA, exactly. And he was the director of NASA literally up until the day he died. And I sent out a video through the email saying Werner von Braun designed a orbiting space station in the 1960s. All right, that became the literal template for both Skylab and for what we now call our International Space Station.
He had that shit mocked up from fucking Nazi Germany.
Hello.
This guy was not a guy who was about warfare. He was about the domination of space and space travel.
Correct.
That's where this guy was coming from, and that's why they put him. This guy was a sharp guy. And he picked up a lot of this from an American, Goddard, who was wrong with that.
Well, basically,
and he took it to another level. But anyway, go ahead. But you
technology develops and spreads faster in an authoritarian country. Everybody knows that. Facts. Obama said the same thing.
Facts.
But you know what? To add on to what Mike was about to touch on, there was also another way. Foreign agents infiltrate our schools of higher learning and technology companies directly, where a lot of technologies are being worked on and developed on those so-called soft spots. Okay, so it's not only the military and it's not only domestic companies operating in that foreign nation. It's also schools, universities, and domestic companies operating here. That foreign agents,
they do everything.
Foreign nations infiltrate. So foreign intelligence, industrial espionage is literally a multi-pronged approach, which is why
and it's a way of life for them over there.
Would literally build and design things in buildings that literally had one door in, one door out, with no windows.
Yeah, and that's why Scholar Chang's on this hangout right now. He's getting pulled over, Homeland Security.
Where is my man, Brother Chang? I ain't seen him in a minute.
Yeah. Oh, well, now you know why. Man,
the fuzz got him. The fuzz got that nigga.
Easy with that N word, please.
BGS, I'm sorry, DE. BGS was gone when we went over the article about the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm not sure if you heard it or not.
No, I didn't hear it.
No, well, basically they said that China needs Russia just as much as the opposite in this relationship. And they're not going to move forward without Russia. So they need the energy, need the natural resources that China lacks.
And plus the other, if you're going to have any kind of development, you also need what? You need force to protect it. You can't have this big, expansive industrial development or even economic development without force behind it actually protect it. So that's one reason that the United States for better part of 2 decades was saying that China couldn't develop into a superpower or take the lead as far as industrial lead, because they didn't have a blue water navy, which is why they're rapidly developing a blue water navy. That is the last piece that they say China lacks, because they've been saying China having blue water navy for the last 20 years.
And Russia has a problem with sea lift capabilities. They don't have. I mean, their dry docks are underwhelmed. They're lacking in tooling technology and mechanics and stuff like that. Even their sailers very much aged. They're well into their 40s, into their 50s. A lot of the millennials don't want to join the Navy.
Well, you lost a lot of young people when you had an economic collapse. Like 40% of your people just left.
Right, they went to the NATO blocks countries.
Yeah.
Also, Russia for decades, even back during the Soviet era, they had a severe lack of in industrial manufacturing capability because the MiGs and the Sukhois were superior aircraft to anything built by Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, and Lockheed, but they could not produce them in large numbers. The
Mhm.
F-22 Raptor was built and designed as an answer to the Sukhoi, but Russia could not build it in large numbers.
Mhm. They don't
I,
have
I, I
not
still I
enough
still
money.
think the F-22 Raptor is inferior to the Sukhoi
It is that has consistently been proven.
37, even the 29, the Fulcrum, where it can do a full loop. It can actually loop around and do a full flip, and it's just crazy what the vectored technology, thrust technology that those guys have
Which they
in
created.
their aircraft. Yeah, it's crazy what they have.
They created that
So
that
so
that thrust
so
vectoring
yeah.
technology that was first seen on the F-22 Raptor. Lockheed did not well they did not invent that.
But then no.
They stole that from Sukhoi.
Zuko. And when we first saw the MiG 29 Fulcrum, when we saw that, that was what really woke us up to where these guys really were. And now they got because they had the one before the 31, the Foxbat, and then we were supposed to break the Foxbat killer was supposed to be the F-16 or whatever. But now I still think that their thrust vectoring technology with their aircraft now is superior to what we have.
It is still,
Yeah,
yeah.
the MiG 31 is actually a space jet.
Yeah.
Hey, how do you think we got those aircraft? I was in the military when we paid pilots to fly them. We paid pilots from the Soviet Union, from former Soviet bloc countries, to give them to America.
How far? What rank did you have when you were in the military? DE, just asking.
Staff sergeant.
Staff sergeant. Okay. All right. Anyway, we'll go ahead, guys.
But I was working in a place where I was operating in a forward base where we had the kind of weapons that could end worlds.
I'll say this. One of the places that I worked, I spent 22 months over in that part of the world. And one of the places that I was at, I was in one of the Arab nations, and I was working as a government contractor at that particular time. And let's just say where I was and what they asked us to build for the military, and
Mm.
there were certain things that I saw, I'll say, take flight. Man, listen, all I can say is if I told you what I saw, you would swear it was science fiction. So the military is sitting on things that they don't even talk about,
Mhm.
as I'm sure DE has seen, and he probably can't even talk about.
Like I said, places that work, I see things. But when you're in the military, you see things like that. Unless you're stationed unless you're in the office, really.
Well, I mean, they're always experimenting.
Oh yeah.
But
Mhm.
the problem is that these these military contractors in the industrial complex, man, are ripping off the U.S. government for a lot of money for
Mhm.
like the
Facts.
Zimmerwald. The Zimmerwald, they ordered 32 of these stealthy ships, and only 4 of them actually were produced to actually work, and the rest of the money, nobody knows where it went.
Mhm.
But they but
The
they
travesty
still
of
but they still don't
F-35.
work. They
Yeah,
still
they
don't.
still don't work. They still don't work.
They've
Yeah.
all been they've all been commissioned. None of them have been deployed on service yet. The first one, the actual Zimwalt, had to be towed back into port twice.
Rubber duckies.
Right.
And just like what BGS said, that's a sign of a declining empire. I mean,
Mhm.
that's if that's not a declining empire, I don't know what is. I don't know what is.
You know what?
You have these private military contractors, charging the U.S. government up the ass for like fucking like look at the F-35 cost a $1 trillion jet. Get the fuck
Mhm.
out of here. And that shit has so many fucking issues with it that they still haven't fixed. Turkey doesn't even want to touch it anymore because they're like, you know what? this is too expensive and it's probably not the best equipment to have. So
Good
You
old
know what?
fashioned Yankee greed.
The funny
this is
thing
going to be the
is
downfall of this country anyway.
It
the
has been.
But that's
the
the
U.S.
problem.
Navy doesn't. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
E. Yeah,
That's
man.
the problem between us and China. When China produce something, it produce something because the country needs it. But when we produce something, we're trying to balance it between the greed of the manufacturer and what the country really needs. So the manufacturer say, look, I have to make so much money off of it, and no matter how it'll take me 10 years to build this airplane because I need to make so much money off of
You know what? You know what? See, the thing is this, right? Lock, Lockheed Martin is the largest defense contractor. Boeing is the second largest defense contractor. Boeing could walk away from the military tomorrow and the company will be just fine. If Lockheed Martin is not making defense military equipment, the company folds overnight. All right. The F-22 Raptor, the F-23, I'm sorry, the YF-23 Widowmaker was, according to all accounts, a better plane than the F-22 Raptor. But if Lockheed did not get the contract to build the Raptor, Lockheed would have went out of business. So the
They,
military industrial complex could not allow Lockheed to fail. The F-35, it does not work. The Navy doesn't want it. They still don't want it. They're asking Boeing to update the F-18 Hornet, but the F-35 has been forced upon them. Why? To keep
That's true.
Lockheed in business.
Yeah, they've been that
That's true.
the F-18 Hornet fight's been going on for the last 25
It's
years.
25 years because they came in there with the regular Hornet, then they came in there with the Super Hornet,
Correct.
of which which I think was a more capable aircraft. But then they got into a big fight, big argument over this 35 that was coming out with the vector, technology as far as the nozzle that goes down, that turns down to have the plane as it goes up and then it straightens out and then
And the one engine.
goes, and the one engine. It's not that it's basically not even it's what is Mach 2 maybe Mach 2 top of Mach 2 plane.
If that.
So it's not very fast. It's not extremely maneuverable as they have it. Exactly correct. They had the YF-23 was a delta wing design aircraft that, quite frankly, had a lot more. It had basically a lot more of an unstable type of naturally unstable type of a platform. So it was much more maneuverable and so forth. And they shut that down to keep Lockheed. All that fuckery is going on in the
and
military right now.
mysteriously, that YF-23 ended up in China's research center.
They shared
Get out of
poor parts,
town.
but they exactly. I mean, this is what I'm saying. They steal all this shit, and these guys are coming up with better aircraft. We have a real problem. Our problem, I believe, is our economic these political corporations that we have set up that are, like you said, too big to fail or whatever. We're caught into too much of that shit, man, and it just
Yeah.
and our leadership is just it's not smart. These guys are not that bright. That's
Well,
the problem. That's a big problem that we have here in this country.
a lot of people are speculating that the University of Tel Aviv or University of Israel, whatever it is in China, is actually a hub for transferring of technologies from the United States to China through that corridor. So that's been long speculated, and we also see Lockheed Martin in the cannabis industry as well. Behind the scenes, they are quietly developing initiatives with the federal government for PTSD by using cannabis. So,
well, who's that spy we caught from Israel? Pollard, I believe his name was. BGS. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Pollard. Yeah, he stole.
It was Pollard. He just got out a couple years ago.
That guy was disseminating all. He was a spy in Israel, but we don't know where a lot of that information went and was sold. We don't know. I believe we do know, but this guy was totally fucked up. So Israel was involved in all that. Yeah, go ahead.
You ever heard of IAI?
Say that again.
Have you ever heard of a company called IAI?
Israeli Aerospace.
Yep. Go ahead.
Do you know that all the technical information for not all, most of the technical information that come through that we use in our military goes through IAI through one company in Israel.
How is that even possible?
How is that even possible? The other one is all our communications flows to two buildings in Israel.
How is that even possible? That is a recipe for disaster.
And they say Israel's America's close friend. Yeah, that's
It is.
all right.
Like more like kissing cousins.
Well, if anyone could ever give
Like
me
you-
a really good reason on the attack on the USS Liberty from Israel, I'd be very interested in somebody giving me a cogent explanation on that.
False
Maybe
flag
maybe
operation.
BGS, maybe you could give us a little idea on that. But
They weren't on our
yeah,
side back then.
if you want, okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's how I saw it.
They weren't on our side back then.
Yeah.
Basically, that was Eisenhower had basically pushed Israel, France, and Great Britain off the Sinai.
Yep.
And by threatening to force basically crash France and Britain's economy. So he told them, if you want us to save our economy, you need to back off the Sinai. So basically they backed off the Sinai, and Israel didn't forgive them. So Israel and France and the UK had a grudge against the United States. So I can understand why they did it.
Yeah, and I can. And what I'm saying is that
Mhm.
Israel is going to move on strictly on their own interests.
Of course.
And they're not going to sit back here and just say, "Well, I'm down with America." They're not down with America. They're going to roll with their own interests.
They have no other way
Period,
of
sir.
surviving at this point going forward because they can't go back to Warsaw, and there's no place in Africa that they can land at and survive at. They have to fight it out right there in Jerusalem. There is no other place for them to go.
Nope.
Not go anywhere else.
And Israel has no natural resources.
But that was a deliberate thing, you know. They did that deliberately. They put Israel there deliberately, with no out, so that they would have to fight. That was something that was done deliberately.
Yeah, the Israel's parked there by the Brits, by the Europeans actually to oversee the Suez Canal. Originally, it's like they made a mistake in 1948.
They were going to bomb Egypt as a retaliatory measure for the USS Liberty. You know, with a nuclear weapon, they brought that thing right back. They recalled it. You know, and bombing Egypt would have caused massive responses because Russia was on standby because they knew what was going on, and they were going to use those Tupolev bombers to actually take out Israel's facility out in Haifa.
Mm-hmm.
They got beat out by a few hours by the Americans.
Oh yeah, I remember that day. Tell you, I was in London.
Yeah,
I was in London.
Yeah, that's like 7 minutes to midnight.
Yep.
That's how close that was.
I think they had it even closer than that. I think they had like 4 minutes to midnight. I think that's when on the doomsday clock. I think they were saying it was that close. It's crazy, thrill, crazy.
And it seems like we're headed back that way.
Certainly, I would like to see where we are on the doomsday clock right now. I know they.
He might not want to know. He might not want to know.
I'd like to take a look at it.
I think it's less than 5 minutes. My personal opinion.
Damn.
Yeah,
tensions are so high, man.
They moved back closer to 3 minutes last year.
Oh, you saw that, and you saw that in 2012 when Putin drew the line and basically his own line in the sand against the United States, and Obama had to back down.
Yep.
See, here's my thing. Even if NATO invades Russia from the west, China's not going to sit down and let that go down that easily. So now you're talking about pulling in Iran, pulling in China, you know, pulling in Europe. Europe doesn't even want to fight. You know, most of these people just want to eat bratwurst.
Europe doesn't want it.
Where does okay? Basically, where does Europe gets its energy from?
Russia.
Hmm?
It gets from Russia
Gets it from
and
Russia
Iran.
and Iran and Saudi Arabia,
Qatar,
right?
Qatar
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So what happens if NATO decides to invade Russia and they cut off the gas and basically Iran decides to close up the Strait of Hormuz?
You're gonna have problems with
Worldwide depression.
you're gonna have problems with Europeans. We're gonna have problems with them. We're not even gonna be able to hold together that coalition. This is not a joke. This is not a game.
Mm,
That's why people can't think about what certain moves cannot be made right now.
yeah,
Can't be done.
basically, the Europeans are tired of fighting wars on their soil.
How BGS? Just look at the history of Europe
Mm,
and their wars
mm-hmm.
over the last 300 years. What,
For 600 years.
3,000 years.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just cutting that in half over the last 300 years. Just
Okay.
take a look at what we are
Mm-hmm.
looking at,
Mm-hmm.
and we can just look over the last 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
The Crimean War.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we can go into the First World War, the Second World War. I mean, I call those. I literally say that the First World War was the Crimean. Was the
Mm-hmm.
Crimean War. That's what I believe the First World War was. But there'll be other historians who might say differently. But that's my view. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look at the conflagrations that they had. Look at the massive losses that they had. Let's talk about the Battle of Islam itself. And then,
Mm-hmm.
it went on for 7 months. How many people did Britain lose in that one battle alone? And then we went back and did it again 30 years later. I mean, come on, man. I mean, the Europeans are done. They're done. They're done. And then they know that they can't survive. They can't survive a large, giant conflict like this again. They've had it all. They've had it all over the last 1,000 years, 30 years war, the 100 years war, all these kind of things. Battle action corps that started out. I mean, it's great. I mean, look at all the stuff that these guys do.
And the Europeans will go up against Russia for what? For what reason?
For what reason?
For America.
For what reason? What are
If
they
you
going
look at
to go again for?
Yeah.
if you look at all their wars, you'll see that they're all pauses in between to rearm.
Well,
Seriously.
all these wars were not. These wars were over battles over land, battles
Mhm.
over taking over destroying certain type of empires, and
Mhm.
moving in and creating their own empires. That's what all that was about: land grab and grabbing them.
Let me grab. But if you
It's been played out.
if you follow if you follow quickly and basically if you look back basically the first European World War was actually the Napoleonic Wars.
The Napoleonic Wars, but
Yep.
but
Yeah.
I would agree, but I really think the real big I saw when I really study history and I'm pretty knowledgeable of it. That just look at that Crimean War, man. Oh Lord, and that was the beginning of the end of the Ottoman Empire, and then it finally crashed
In World War One.
But that's what
Yeah.
that's what that was all about. In World War One, yeah.
See,
That-
this is why I keep saying I do not see large-scale direct military conflict between the U.S., Russia, China, and North Korea. If anything, we will see cold wars. We may see proxy wars fought through proxy states. But I do not see direct military conflict between these powers for several reasons. First and foremost, there are too many nuclear weapons to literally end all life on this planet. Number two, it is easier to fight economic proxy, economic cold war using proxies to achieve your goals. So I do not see direct military conflict. Just my opinion, looking at things that I'm looking at, I see proxy wars fought through proxy states, basically a new Cold War.
You're already in the Cold War right now.
Yeah, the military
agree.
conflict is happening in cyberspace, and I can tell you
we're already in it.
in cybersecurity, they are fighting big time.
There
Yeah,
you go.
but that's still Cold War. It's not a bloodbath on the ground. Like we're talking.
Well, yeah, it's not going to have any
Right.
It's not going to have any immediate casualties, but the destruction of property is a big issue. Shutting down hospitals, shutting down bridges and traffic
Yeah,
light systems.
yeah,
and stuff like that.
those are basically Cold Wars. They're outside of the man-on-man military tactics where we have large populations actually going into these big, large-scale wars, like he's talking about between superpowers. So these are all Cold War tactics. They were actually doing the same thing that you talk about was going on now was going on back then in the Cold War.
What about the weather war?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the weather wars?
Oh yeah, horrible.
You guys
That's,
forget that part.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's still another Cold War tactic.
They're
Yeah.
they're fighting using the weather now.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do. Well, yeah, there's other things that are going on that why they're actually modifying the weather.
Mm.
Well, I got one more piece I want to bring up. Joe Biden running. What do you guys take on the creepy man?
Oh,
He ain't gonna win. That
Bring it
nigga ain't
out.
gonna win.
I'm going to say this. I just want to jump in here real quick. Did a little analysis. I took a look at the red states. I took a look at the blue states. Took a look to see where were most of the jobs, where were the most profitable states, who was making the most money, who was bringing forth the most jobs, who were getting hired the most in each given state. I started to look at this thing and I started to break that. Came down to the blue states. Blue states are doing the most hiring. The blue states are hiring the most people. Black people are being hired the most in the blue states. That's where this game is. When I take a look at Biden and I look at him and why a guy 75 years old like this would take a chance to run, they have sat down and they've done the numbers. They crunched this thing closely. They've looked at the maps pretty clearly. Looked at Ohio. They've looked at Pennsylvania. They, I'm some key battlegrounds. Florida will probably go to Trump, but there's issues in those states where they could be challenged. Michigan. Then we start to look at some of the other Florida states. Let's take a look at Minnesota. Let's take a look at states like Wisconsin, Iowa. All right, we start to look there. There's a lot of softness there right now. Economies are getting a little bit tight. Some issues are going on there. People are not as happy as we're looking at. We're looking at the overall rate, unemployment rate should be about 4%. You're looking at some of these states that are at close to 5%, some moving close to 6% in these areas that are in the red state areas, where the blue states are covering everybody's ass once again, and they are the ones that have the lowest unemployment rates. So what Biden and these guys are looking at are saying, hey, listen, this is originally our economy. This is what we created first. This is what this guy inherited. I'm going to sit back here and regain our legacy of what we've created. And I'm going to sit down here and challenge this guy, state for state. I could potentially run a race for what we're talking about, the electoral college map, if you will, and potentially beat this guy if I can take one or two of the battleground states here. Pennsylvania is up for play. So is Ohio. All right. We can look at Virginia and some of these other areas. I'm looking at why this guy potentially has run. Can he win? Don't know. But
Nobody
I can understand why this guy is running. And why Trump is nervous, and that's why he's doing this infrastructure deal where they cut it back on Obama. He's got to run it really. He's got to move now towards the middle and jump into infrastructure and do some of this stuff to kind of jumpstart his game, so he can show some of his weakness up. Trump has got a real issue here. If Biden becomes the candidate and runs in the general election, he's not going to run like Hillary. He's going to be a lot smarter. And all of Obama's former people that he had, they like Pluff and Axelrod and these guys who are now working for some of the other large corporations, but now they'll come back underneath this banner and put together their old squad to take this guy out. And I'm just saying he has a path to possible victory. Not to say that he will win, because it's difficult to unseat a sitting president, but still, this guy is running for a reason, and he's 75 years old. He doesn't need this. He's out here, and I think these guys think they can take this guy out. That's just my quick initial breakdown. You guys take it from there. Go ahead.
I always thought BGS was a Kamala supporter.
Gentlemen, I am gonna
Never.
I'm gonna ask you guys a question.
Have a good night, Paul.
All right. Good
I think
night, guys.
Good night, Paul.
Good night.
I think Trump might win, but it depends on who the Democrats get as the vice president to determine who's going to be president.
I don't even know why we even talking about. All we talking about is who's gonna make. This is like the World Cup. Okay, this is just a round robin to see who makes it to the next group, who comes out of the Group A and Group B. So basically, all Biden is doing is basically find actually come out of Group B, so they actually get to the next phase. Then 2020, you're going to see it. Yeah, well, basically, yeah, Biden is time, literally, to see if he's actually viable. Because all we're doing now is shaking out people that are non-viable, like Kamala Harris and a few others. Okay, we look at your record. Okay, you're not even eligible to really run. So basically, we're going to boot you out before the main event. Really, don't even start running till 2020.
I think the key thing is, the key thing is, because every economic indicator states that we're going to be in recession by 2020, and that has Trump a bit nervous. But aside all that, if there is no recession within 2020 with this Mueller thing, if I don't know, it kind of blew over. It kind of blew over, but it came back. But if he survives this, and there's no recession, he can, gin up his base to say, listen, it's the Democrats to try to say that your vote is illegitimate, is not, it was not, legitimate, and they're trying to say the Russians stole the election and blah blah blah. So he might gin up his base, but everything just depends on the economy. The economy's stupid. Just like the saying goes. But if there is a recession in 2020, and Mike has talked about this with the Black Brain Trust Friday talks, if there's a recession and the next recession is going to be worse than 2008, Trump doesn't stand a chance. Trump doesn't stand a chance. He will possibly lose. That's my take on it. It just depends on the economy. If the recession is pushed back till 2021, he might have a chance. He could have a chance. Nago makes some very good points, but Trump still has a lot of support from those crazy white folks. So they'll come out for him, especially if he survives this Mueller bullshit, Russia, whatever. But again, it just depends on the economy.
You see, the only thing I say about Trump is he's not. See, the reason why he looks vulnerable because he hasn't expanded his base. He hasn't broadened his base. He's got that same, hardcore crew of those
deplorables.
Huh? Well, we don't want to use that term, but he's got that crew. But
those crazy ass crackers.
He hasn't broadened his base as much as one would like to see. That's where he's kind of vulnerable. And these other states that I'm talking about, let's look at Minnesota. Minnesota itself, here they are now. All of a sudden, their economy's starting to slow down. They're still spending stimulus money that they got from the original TARP program. Because if you're not a corrupt state and you have this, all this money that comes in, you just can't spend a couple of billion, billions and billions all out with, if you're not a corrupt state. So there's still money that these guys are still rolling off of from the Obama days. So they got a lot of shit that they can run on this guy. Well, and claim that this is our economy, not yours. I mean, of which, of course, Trump can try to claim, of which he can because he's president. So things are going this way underneath him. But still, this guy, Biden, was Veep, and he wasn't just a sit aside Veep. He was a very active one with Obama. So they're boys. They're running again.
There's only like two black people live in Minnesota anyways, Cerulean Gray and King Sigma. I mean, it's not that many black people in Minnesota use up the budget anyways.
When Prince was alive.
But I'm saying as far as the infrastructure and a lot of other stuff. So I'm just saying, there's a lot here why this, I understand why this guy is running. He's 75 years old. He doesn't have to do this. This guy can sit back and be on an electric circuit making a lot of money, but he's deciding to run. So the numbers are coming up where they're saying this guy can be beat. Trump has not broadened his base at the level that he needs to, in my view, to run without thinking about he may not be able to get beat. He potentially is beatable. He can be beaten.
If he can't get the wall,
it just depends on what kind of race the Democrats can put up and how they can get their people out. If they can get their people out and run a very strong ground game and challenge this guy in a couple of the key battleground states and take him out or at least beat him or at least beat him on an average in these flyover states, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, and these places, if they whose economies are not that good.
They're killing themselves on opioids.
They kill themselves on opioids.
Mm.
All right, the economy's not. You got businesses leaving. You've got
Mm-hmm.
a lot of issues there.
You got a big ass brain drain coming from the Midwest to the coast.
Exactly correct.
Mm-hmm.
And where are the states that are really holding up the economy? It's the blue states, not the red ones, not the red states.
Now,
So that's the issue. I'm just looking at it from a strategic political perspective, from the numbers. Why somebody like this guy would run?
I think Florida and Texas are the only two red states that have any money.
The only ones, and still Florida is a bit teetering. Okay, Texas is doing actually halfway decent. Okay, but Florida is teetering. Remember, they were in play, and Obama won that shit fucking 1 year. The first year he ran. So I mean, when he became president the first time. So I'm saying there is weakness. There's weakness in the presidency, and with the president. If this guy loses a key battleground state, it could be over for him. Pennsylvania is up for grabs. Ohio, as we're starting to see with the automobile industry and some of the issues where Obama saved the industry and they paid him back 2 times when he ran. Now all of a sudden they went with this guy Trump, and now the automobile industry is teetering heavily there. And we know GM is having its problems and so forth. So what's going to happen there? There's some real issues. And I think that's how you have to look at this. Anyway, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got a question to ask you, Nago. What do you think? What do you think? How would the black vote go? Is it going to be divided, or is it going to go Democrat?
It's difficult to say, but looking at our history, look at how we've been voting historically, we're going Democrat. Okay.
What has the Republicans done to actually make black folks switch over?
Yeah, they don't really have a good answer.
They got Ben Carson and Kanye.
It didn't work last election.
And Omarosa.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I'm just looking at the numbers. And Biden, he was part of that, building the economy and putting the country back on its feet, if you will, and so forth. And now all of a sudden, Trump's trying to claim it. He's come back to say, "Fuck that. This is us. This is what we did." And he's going to have a legitimate leg to stand on to fight this guy with. So I'm just saying, Trump is nervous. He should be. And, he's vulnerable. There is vulnerability here. There is vulnerability. So I'm not saying that he will lose, but I'm saying he is vulnerable. He's vulnerable. He can potentially be beaten. If you play this thing right, and if he plays the right 50-state strategy and hits this electoral college map the way that they need to hit it, they could potentially beat this guy. The president cannot afford to lose any key battleground states. He can't afford to lose any.
But Biden hasn't been nominated yet. He hasn't been nominated. He hasn't even been nominated yet. He's got to survive to that.
I believe he will. I believe that's already in the mix. One more again. I think Bernie is going to be once again the redhead stepchild. In the house, and they're going to slap his ass up and remove him one more time, and they're going to go with the Veep, the former Veep. That's how I see this thing going on. And this guy is not going to make the same mistakes that Hillary did. Hillary was a shit candidate who ran. This guy's going to be totally different.
Yeah, Biden went out and got Simone Sanders with her, black men can't talk, have any political opinions. That woman, right? Same sister.
Well, let's see what happens. It's kind of early. I'm not saying this guy will win. I'm just saying I'm looking at what the topography looks like. I've looked at this thing from the numbers. I've looked at the red states. I've looked at the blue states. I've seen where the employment numbers are, who's doing well, who isn't, and this is the reason why I think this guy is running.
Can he carry California?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He'll carry California. Yeah. That's classic.
California doesn't like Trump anyway.
Yeah. California and New York, he got that. But the key is these flyovers where Hillary fucked up. This guy's not going to make that mistake.
She fucked up in Pennsylvania.
She fucked. And Biden is originally from Pennsylvania, and he's a Maryland guy, and moved to Maryland and all that. So he's got and he's a union guy and all this kind of. So there's a lot of things that these guys are going to try to run on. Now I understand that some of the counter arguments that they're going to try to run against him and so forth, But what negates a lot of that is the fact that he ran underneath the Obama administration that helped to put the economy back on. I know a lot of black people saying, "Oh, you didn't do a whole lot for black people." My thing was, I understood why they elected Obama. Obama was elected to fix the economy. That's what he was.
Yes, it was. Yeah, to keep
The-
keep it afloat.
to keep it. That was his job. That's what he was there for.
Yep.
Okay, and that's basically what he did.
Yes.
So so at the end of the day, he did deliver. That's why he got 2 terms. All right. So ultimately, guys are going to be looking potentially to getting back to feeling good again. Can Biden make people feel better than Trump is the key, and I don't know if that's going to happen, if he even makes it. But that's kind of where we're at. But there is vulnerability with the president.
Oh yeah, when he walks in, come to talk about fake news and going up against the press, because he's not going to have he won't be the press's darling like he was his first run.
That's right. And Biden's a fighter. Biden ain't going to stand back. Biden's going to be like, I'm coming to kick your ass. He'll be in the back, throwing punches and bobbing and weaving and doing the shit that he does. Showing you I'm a fucking active
I would like that. I would like to see that.
I'm ready to go.
Yeah,
and this is the kind of campaign he's going to run. He's going to be like Hillary, walking around her big fat funky ass, falling out, passing out all over the joint, looking all fucked up and sitting around like an entitled bitch. Well, this my husband ran. Give me this shit. Now get the fuck out of here. Get your fat funky ass out of here.
So why is Hillary running in?
Hillary ain't running.
She would like to run, but I'd be shocked if Hillary tried to run.
No, Hillary ain't run. She fucked the party. I mean, the Democrats fucked up by going with Clintonian politics and turned the party fucking and set the party back them in 20 years. So they can't do that.
There's still stuff on Hillary they haven't revealed.
Yeah, man, no. Hillary, she can't. Her big funky fat ass can't come out there again. She finished. Keep her ass out of there. She done. All right. So right now, who's in there is in there right now. I think Biden is going to be the guy when all this comes down, and that's the most realistic chance that the Democrats might have to win this thing.
But do you think the scandals though that Biden, with the whole Me Too thing and
all that's bullshit.
That's small potatoes. You got to have something a little more solid.
You remember that Biden is Mr. VAWA, Violence Against Women Act. That's where his strong suit is.
Forgot about that.
Yeah. So I'm just saying. I'm just looking at where the numbers are. Where are the jobs? Who's benefiting the most? What states are really doing the best? And it's coming down on the blues.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
If he was like a junior senator or something like that, then all that kind of stuff would matter. But dude's been in Congress for damn near 50 years. So.
And he was vice president.
He's vice president
of doing some of the most turbulent times of the country, and they put the country back up on its feet. He's got something to run. He's got something to run on. So all that past shit they can talk about. Well, he did this. Hey, hell, you can say I did this against black people, whatever. I ran with the fucking president of the United States. The first black one. This is where we're at. Come on, cut this all.
He was senator. Was he senator of Delaware for like 25 years or something like that?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. So I mean, like I said, he's a credible candidate. He's credible. Like Bernie's credible, and other. They have some credible candidates. If he gets through the primary, of which he's going to run I think he's going to run a very strong caucus type of a primary.
Yeah.
Kind of like how Obama ran against Hillary in 2008, which is going to be very close to the Electoral College map as well. And he's going to see how many delegates he can roll up from each state. And the smaller states, he's going to be trying to run and roll a lot of those guys up there. So I know the strategy that he's going to run. He's going to run a very Obama-esque strategy. Trust me.
Yeah. Who's his competition? The only competition really is Sanders.
Sanders. Yeah. So
because everyone else is pathetic. Kamala Harris, cry-ass Booker, and fucking Beto. Who lost an easy election in Texas?
I don't know. Tulsi is a bit of a thorn inside the Democratic Party right now with her talking points. She is very much a progressive. So
what I'm saying is, but she's not really. She might develop into competition, but right now she's still small potatoes.
She's still junior varsity.
I mean, let's just say from the Democratic perspective, if they're really going to try to get a groundswell, running a very strong progressive type of candidacy actually could, in my view, could be quite effective. But let's see kind of how Biden and them try to co-opt that a tad bit and grab a larger populist message and then try to run with that as well. And let's see how that rolls up against Trump. Trump is definitely a guy you can easily set up a campaign and run against. You can easily run against this guy, is what I'm saying. Not to say that you'll win, but you can run against him. You could really, choose sides and really run against this guy. What Trump is going to try to do is really run more towards the middle, because Trump really is not an ideological conservative Republican. He just became a Republican back in 2007 or whatever. So he's not ideologically there. So there's a lot of shit. And remember, he did not really, he didn't run against tough opposition when he ran. He hasn't run against anybody who's been really hard. He's going to be in a real race this time around. He ran against a whole bunch of sucker ladies the last time, and including Hillary. He's going to come up against some real competition. He's going to come against some real comp this time around. So it's going to be a different race for him, and and there's going to be some hard counterpoints against this guy. So he's going to have his work cut out for him. The presidency definitely helps him in being there. It definitely helps. That's going to be tough. It's tough to unseat the president, but there is a path to victory for a good opponent here. There is a path, and I think that's what Biden is saying.
Right, so who does Biden pick for a VP? If this
don't know.
Don't know.
Elizabeth Warren, like a progressive, I guess.
No.
They ain't grabbing no broads. Fuck that. Nah. I'm sorry to say it. I'm sorry. I know guys are going to upset me here and that, but they're not grabbing. That's not going to work. He's he's going to have to grab another guy. Who that's going to be, I don't know. But they ain't putting no woman up there. Nah. People are gonna be nervous about that.
Too early to tell. It's still the first quarter.
It is. I'm just saying, just knowing America and kind of how we roll. I don't see no woman right now in the president or vice president spot where people are going to be comfortable. That could be a real issue, especially running in middle America. And a lot of white women are not going to support a woman up in there either. That's the undercover secret to this thing that a lot of people want to talk about.
I think the only woman that could really run and have a legit shot really is probably, and she's not going to run. It's probably Michelle Obama. It's probably
not her time, not her time. And the way Hillary took that beating up there, the president. I mean, she could possibly do it, but not now. That time ain't now. I tell you that. So but. Let's see what happens. This race is going to be funky. This is going to be a funky game going on here right now. So let's see what stops they pull out. I was thinking that maybe Trump kind of had a clear easy run, but I'm saying he may have some stiff opposition here. He could be challenged. I think he's going to face a real challenge this time.
The thing is, you got to go at Trump from an asymmetrical standpoint. You got to get control over social media. You got to get control over all types of slots on social media. Tulsi Gabbard's YouTube page stay popping all the time, and although she doesn't get a lot of looks, she's always on there. Doing live streams and whatnot. So I give her a lot of credit for what she's doing. Although she's like BJ says, she's a rookie coming out of AAU. You really want to go at Trump, you got to spend a boatload of money just on social media advertising.
They will, but anyway, I was gonna. So BGS, what do you think about what I have to say? You think I'm off? You think I'm off on this or what?
No, you're pretty much on. And Andy, got to remember, Trump has been around since the mid '80s. He didn't just show up one day.
Yeah. Trump been around. Trump's been around, and he's been talking about running for president for the last damn near 30 years.
Yep.
So Trump has been out there. People want to say this guy kind of came out of nowhere. That's not true. Trump's been around a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, like I said, I don't believe Trump won his election last. I believe Hillary and them and Democrats lost. They ran like they totally blew it. And they let this guy roll up in there and do his thing. Now the president is going to have to win this election. He's going to have to win it, and that's where he is now. Okay, so you won't have a lot of people stumble on the block now. Now you're going to have some real opposition coming out here. The Democrats also have the Congress underneath them. They're going to try to change the Senate. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of heat going on here, and the president's got a lot on his back right now. Got a lot on his plate. This is serious business. You know?
Can I ask you guys a question? You are BGS. Right now, Trump has got a lot on his plate with this investigation, and a lot of people, especially in the blue state, look at this investigation as holding Trump accountable. You know, how can he overcome this? Will he be able to overcome this?
It depends on what his competition is and what it does. If the competition can't beat him, and he's a sitting president. 2, he can raise more money. 3, if he can keep his base, nothing really changes. So it depends on there's a lot of moving parts. Yes, he can win it again. Nixon did it. Nixon had a lot of stuff following him. He still got reelected.
And also Trump didn't spend a whole lot of money first time go around. He spent like less than $1 million or less on advertising. So he got away.
He got a lot of free media.
Free press. He was a press darling because he was entertaining, and actually he got a lot of eyeballs. So, but he's not going to have that this time around.
But people did underestimate, Trump as a media guy, because Trump was a media guy. You know, he had his own TV programs and all this. He was a media guy. So they kind of underestimated him there a little bit. And then when they saw just how this guy was able to really play the media so well, they vastly underestimated his ability there, and they took a tremendous beating. So Trump was very good there. Now people know he's good there, so now they know where he's strong, and they're going to try to really strike him where he has voids, where he's weak, and he has weaknesses. And let's see if the Democrats can they put together the type of candidacy and so forth to unseat him. He can be beaten. And there's weakness in some. Like I said, I'm looking at some of these key states, some of the key battleground states, these key flyover states. You got to talk about the electoral college map. Forget about the popular vote and all that. Forget about all that right now, because that's not what's going to get you elected as president. And if you're looking at that EC map, there's weaknesses. There's a lot of weaknesses right now that can be that are exploitable. Let's see if they can exploit them in some of these key states where this guy can lose. If the president loses a battleground state, he's done. I'm telling you, he can't lose a battleground state. He can't. He's got weaknesses. That's the key. That's what these guys are looking at. That's what these guys are seeing. This guy can be taken. He can potentially lose. He could potentially lose Pennsylvania. He could potentially lose Ohio. He could lose here. Okay, he could get beaten in Virginia. He could get beaten in these. There's some key areas that this guy can be beat, and not to say that he will, but he can. There's potential here. That's why Biden's out there. They've crunched the numbers. They've looked at it, And I look at things very much like a strategist, and I'm looking at this blue state run, and these are where the jobs and the employment numbers really are being shored up. That's not good for the president.
Yeah, today, right? Early this morning, I was looking at the news, and it says that Trump and the Democrats work out some $2 trillion worth of domestic programs that nobody knows where it's going to be paid for. But you think the Democrats are going to give him that in the election year?
Well, you see, Pelosi is Speaker of the House, right? So in order for her to be effective Speaker, and she wants to be, significant as far as an infrastructure bill and this kind of thing that can go on, she's got some interest in passing this, because that gives her some, some more political chops, and then she could come down the line a little bit later on and railroad the president on something else. But she wants to be effective as a speaker, kind of like how Tip O'Neill worked with Reagan. You know what I mean? So this is the political game that's being played. So Trump has some aces up his sleeve to play. He does have some strong aces. That's the power of the presidency. So he does have some aces he can play here. So that's an ace he can potentially play with this infrastructure program he's got that they're going to try to put on the table. That's an ace. It's an ace he can play. So let's see how that goes. And Pelosi might play into that. So politically. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see. This is, like I said, this shit's gonna be funky. just gonna be funky. You know, it's gonna be funky. You just can't look at this thing emotionally. You have to really look at where the numbers are dropping here. You got to look at where the numbers are and
Right.
how some of this political brinksmanship is going to be played. But anyway, go ahead, gentlemen. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Please share the video, like it as well. We are Manosphere 3.0 compliant.
Yes, sir.
No fuckery goes on over here. But thank you all for joining us, and have a good night.
All right.
Okay.